Hey my watchers, welcome. Today we are gonna see, what if Harry Potter fallen for Princess Luna? Harry Potter x My Little Pony. Join Patreon for early access exclusive content of Super Op stories. Also contents that's too far for YouTube. You will get 400 content there, please do check that too. Please subscribe this channel, because definitely I will try my best to provide a valuable content for you all. Also check the description to support the original author for this beautiful creation. Princess Luna looked out over the lands of Equestria from one of the many palace balcony with a small smile, just enjoying the few moments between her sister lowering the sun and her raising the moon. Her joy coming from the thought that maybe somewhere within Equestria someone might truly enjoy her night. She had planned this night to help celebrate her good mood from the other week's Nightmare Night Festival. After all, she had managed to make friends with Twilight Sparkle and her friends, if only in a passing friendship at the moment, but still an improvement on how it had been before her banishment to the moon over 1,000 years ago. I see you have something special tonight, my dear sister. Princess Celestia says in her gentile tone, moving slowly and gracefully to stand beside the dark sapphire alicorn, just looking out over the land, a small smile gracing her face as the sun started its finial descent, being thankful that she didn't have to worry about rising the moon as well anymore. She knew that she could never do as good a job of making the nights beautiful as Luna had been able to, even if only the two sisters in the past were the only ones to enjoy said beauty. Indeed I do, dear sister, and I hope many ponies remain awake long enough to enjoy it. Luna says, looking up at her white-coated sister, and her long wavy multicolored mane and tail, her long white horn giving off a soft glow for a moment before going back to normal, leaving her sister just looking at the now setting sun. Then I look forward to seeing your work tonight, my sister. Celestia says softly, bringing her head down enough to gently nuzzle Luna's head like she had done countless times since Luna's return. Luna just nods as she jumps off the balcony and flies down to her place in the courtyard to start the moon, raising her personal guard, starting to step forward to replace her sisters as she started to fly upwards, her horn glowing with magic as she raises higher and higher, the moon raising behind her before it took over its own flight over the skies, allowing the dark sapphire blue alicorn to land back in the courtyard, looking up at the moon with a proud smile as the stars start to shine, almost bathing the palace in a soft whitish glow. It is already shaping up to be one of your more beautiful nights, dear sister. Maybe you should go down to Ponyville and visit my students and her friends to see what they think. Celestia says, walking out into the courtyard, a flash of green flames and smoke being all Luna needed to see to know that her sister had already warned her students that she might be visiting later on that night. I might just do that, sister. That is, if you don't mind me taking your carriage, as I don't think the other ponies appreciate my carriage as much as yours. Luna finished with a small little shy voice as she looked at her sister, remembering how many of the ponies within Ponyville had cowered in fear at the sight of her carriage when she had visited the other week, although they might have done that as well because of how she had spoken to them at first. Now Luna, I think you should go in your own carriage. After all, the other ponies won't get used to your return if you keep on hiding from them by using my carriage as well as using your magic to look like someone else. Celestia says with a small smile at her sister's guilty look at being caught using her magic to hide from just about everyone. All right, sister, I'll take my own carriage and I'll visit Ponyville, if only to visit Twilight and maybe her friends. Luna says with a sigh, turning and starting to walk towards the main gate, knowing that her carriage would be waiting for her on arrival at the gate. I'm sure you will have a good time, Luna, just be yourself and remember to speak softly, not with the royal Canterlot voice. Celestia says with a smile, moving to walk a little behind her younger sister, her eyes following the slightly smaller mare as she steps up into her gothic-looking carriage, a cloak forming over her sister's dark sapphire body, hiding the wavy starry mane and tail, almost like her sister had taken pieces of the night sky she spent so long working on to make her own tail and mane. That lesson I remember, sister. See you with the sunrise. Luna says, tapping a single hoof on the carriage as the two guards who were going to be pulling it took off her magic, adding them a little in lifting the heavy black and gray carriage, a small smile forming on her lips at the thought of seeing her new friend Twilight. An hour later, Luna called a halt to her two guards, hovering a good dozen meters above the road leading into Ponyville. Looking around for a moment, Luna jumped down and landed on the road, her cloak flowing out and upwards as she lands, only to settle back down over her flanks, the hood remaining up over her head to stop on her horn. Find something to entertain yourself, but keep an eye out for my signal to come and pick me up, as I am sure the wielders of the elements of harmony are more than enough to guard my person. The two guards seemed to look at each other for a moment before nodding. After all, they answered to Luna, not Celestia, as such if their princess asked them to do something they would do it no matter what Princess Celestia ordered. the carriage turning sharply as the pair took off towards the nearby Everfree forest to wait for their princess signal. That and to see if the zebra Zekra had anything special they might drink while they waited. Looking around for a moment, Luna gave a small nod and smile at the sight of a few ponies seating on their balconies or cushion on their front steps, looking up at the night sky or seating together in a rather romantic way in some of the softly lit gardens. Not a single pony, however, seemed to notice her walking down the street towards the tree that was the town library. I am so glad so many of them are enjoying my night. Such a lovely change from 1,000 years ago, she thought to herself, turning her head away from a young couple who were trading kisses and nuzzling each other. Luna's track to the library came to a stop when she saw a single ebony unicorn seating on his front step, the sign over his door showing a simple cloak and a few sparks around it. The single word enchantment under this symbol was all the young princess need to know. The young colt seemed to sell magical items and cloths, yet instead of being closed like all other business around his shop, his door was open and an open sign in plain view next to the step. Keeping your store open a little late this night, young sir? Luna asks in a genteel tone, moving to stand just across from the young unicorn, his emerald green eyes turning enough to look up at her cloaked form, his cutie mark now viable to Luna from her new angel. The sight of what looked like a section of her night sky on a clear night being only just viable, ageist his ebony coat that and a fine purple like mist seemed to lightly dust over the star pattern on his flanks, the sight reflecting off a single lock of silver hair in the mane catching her eye. Next, the sight of a small scar running through that area of his forehead, showing that he had taken an injury at some point in his youth, and the hair now growing from that point was streaked silver. Hard to run a business when you close shop only an hour after opening, the unicorn says with a small laugh, getting to his feet and starting to move back into the shop, looking over his shoulder as he moves. Can I interest you in anything this night, my dear filly? A new cloak that shines as the stars in the sky? Or maybe a mirror that allows you to talk with the young stallion you may fancy down the lane without your parents knowing. Luna's head pulled back at the last comment, but luckily her hood remained in place as the unicorn gave a small laugh at her knee-jerk reaction, moving around to stand behind his counter as Luna walked into the store, not really interested in buying anything, just wanting to know this young unicorn a little better, maybe even become friends. As it was clear to her that, like herself, he didn't seem to have many friends. Although I can't see myself needing these mirrors for that reason, I may buy a set so my sister and myself can talk without a problem when she leaves the house for her long visits across Equestria. Good reason as any I have heard. The mirrors in the case off to your left are for communicating. See if any of them would be a good match for you and your sister, he says, swinging his head to his right, Luna turning her head slowly to take in the whole shop as she slowly moved towards the case. Most of the shop had large glass cases that held all sorts of items, a few mirrors, others jeweler that seemed to either glow with light or seemed to reflect light so that none shined on it. Another held simple blades that looked to be sharp and used for a range of things from harvesting plants to combat. Scattered around the middle of the shop was a number of clothing rakes that had beautified cloaks and robes in a wide range of colors and styles that any unicorn mage would love to own. Arriving at the case he had pointed out, Luna looked over the mirrors that were all paired side by side, over 24 sets of them laid it out for anyone to see. One set had her pausing as it had a crescent moon much like her own cutie mark set in the top of the frame, while its partner had a sun just like her sister's. The frames themselves also had defiances, the moon marked one being done in silver with carefully placed amethyst and sapphires set into it, while the sun one was made from gold, but it had a slight silvery color to it, making it a soft yellow, not as bright as gold normally would be. It also had a number of ambers and rubies within the frame. A good eye, my lady. I crafted those a few days after Princess Luna returned from her exile and was freed from Nightmare Moon. I had planned on sending them both to the palace as a way of welcoming back the true ruler of the night, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. After all, why would the princess I respect the most want something like this from a lowly commoner like me? The unicorn says, moving to stand next to Luna and just look at the mirrors that had caught her eye. You do yourself an injustice, my dear shopkeep, as I'm sure Princess Celestia and Luna would love them greatly, and even ask for your skills in a number of other creations. Luna says a little sharply, not helping but think that if he had done as he originally planned, she might have made a friend other than her sister a lot soon than just the other week. Maybe you're right, still too late now. The unicorn says, moving back to the counter, his horn giving off a deep purple glow as he started to craft some piece of jeweler that looked to be some form of necklace. Luna looked at the two mirrors before moving over to the counter, taking a moment to levitate one of the cloaks that was jet black with a border of sapphires that seemed to twinkle like stars. I'll take this cloak and those two mirrors, shopkeep. Right away, my dear fee. The unicorn says, waving his head as the mirror case glowed with magic before the pair of mirrors rose up. Throw the glass like it wasn't even there, coming over to land before Luna on the cloak, the unicorn giving the price, which Luna paid for without a problem with a wave of her head, the coins floating up from a pocket within her cloak, landing in the register a moment later as she turns to head towards the door, her new cloak and mirrors being put in a simple saddle bag which the unicorn placed on her back carefully over her cloak. Thank you, good sir, and I trust my sister, and I may be back soon enough to look over more of your merchandise. Luna says, allowing some of her mane to escape her cloak hood, the unicorn's eyes widening a little at the sight of the starry night-like mane. He didn't, however, fall to his knees like so many other ponies. Instead, he lowered his head a little before stepping back. You are too kind, my lady. I hope your sister enjoys the mirror, he says, as Luna could only give a small smile and nod of the head, leaving the shop a moment later, resuming her course for Twilight's home. Arriving at the tree that had been hollowed out to form the town library, Luna raised a hoof and knocked on the door, looking up at the tree as she waits for her sister's protege to answer the door. Her eyes, however, kept on drifting up to either the night sky or down the street to the shop, where she could just make out the sign and lights. A call of greeting had her head turning to look down at the lavender-colored pony, who had a large smile on her face as she steps back to allow Luna to enter her home. Luna only smiling back as she enters, moving to one of the cushions that had been set up before a low table, her saddle bag rising up and landing on the table as her cloak breaks apart into bats which quickly flow out of the house and into the night. How nice to see you again, Twilight Sparkle. I trust everything is going okay with your studies and your friends are in good health, Luna says, turning her head just enough to see the young pony walk towards her, a wave of her head summing up a teapot and cups while also closing the door and putting away a few books that had been left out. Everything is fine at the moment, Princess Luna. Rarity getting stressed out over her latest creation being the only major thing to happen around here since you visited the other week, Twilight says, pouring the tea for them both before seating down herself, her head looking up to her living area for a moment before shaking her head and looking back at the princess. That Ponyville always stress out over her work, Miss Twilight, my friend. But I'm sure she is glad to have friends such as yourself and the others to help out and help her relax, Luna says with a small smile, raising her cup to her lips to take a small sip of the tea, nodding in approval of the blend. Anyway, I also came to see what you think of my effects for this night, as I get so few chances to speak with the other ponies about my work and what they think. I would greatly enjoy to hear your thoughts on my work since I have been freed from Nightmare Moon. Twilight looked surprised at the request but quickly got over the shock and started to talk about everything she thought of the night sky and how a small but noticeable change to the sky since Luna had come back and taken back over the rising of the moon and helping her sister wherever possible. Listening with all of her attention, Luna couldn't help but smile and asks if there was anything Twilight would change if she had control over the night sky the way Luna did. Twilight being more than happy to do as such comments on making some of the constellation more clearer or brighter. Giving a nod after some comments Twilight had given, Luna looked over at the clock to see it was coming up to the middle of the night. Her eyes going back to the pony before her making a note that her head was starting to dip a little but otherwise was looking at her with kindness and friendship seeming to sparkle in her eyes. Looking at her pack for a moment, Luna looked back at Twilight and says while slowly getting to her feet and levitate the saddle bag back to her back, only taking a moment to pull her new cloak out, pulling it on a moment later, turning side on to see how it flowed over her body. You wouldn't happen to know anything about the ebony unicorn who runs a little shop down the street, would you, Miss Twilight? Oh, you must be talking about Harry Nightsky. He showed up in town a little before I did. His shop sells mostly enchanted objects, my telescope being one such item, but he does sell the odd potion ingredient. He doesn't talk much to anyone and only ever opens his store after sundown and closes a little after sunrise, Twilight says, getting to her feet, moving around the table to stand besides the Princess of the Night. I will have to talk to my sister then about him, as his crafts are some of the best I have seen since returning from my imprisonment, Luna says, moving towards the door, opening it without even breaking stride as her horn gave off a low glow of magic. Oh, I'm sure Harry would really like that. If you can get him to talk about something other than the night sky. Although you two would have a great many things to talk about, wouldn't you, Princess Luna? Twilight says, standing in her doorway, now watching as Luna sent off a message spell for her carriage to come and pick her up. I'll be sure to do that, Princess, Twilight says, softly giving a deep bow as Luna climbed into her carriage, giving a nod of the head as farewell to the bowing unicorn before signaling her guard to move out. Asterisk, now I know there are bad spelling or more to the point wrong words but right spelling within the FIC, but I am trying and working on fixing those where possible. Got to love WordWeb program, it's been a big help. so I apologize for them now and hope that you all enjoy this chapter and leave lots more reviews. Also, yes, I know I made Harry and Luna seem perfect together, but they will have their ups and downs, but I have always said ever since I started reading this style of crossover fics that those two should get together, but it will take a little time, so don't worry. Enjoy! Chapter 2, Sisters. Luna walked down one of the many hallways of the palace much later the same night she had gone to see Twilight. Her new cloak sweeping along around her, hooves the guard all around stepping to one side at her passing, but otherwise didn't say anything as she moved past them. A few of her own guard giving a soft greeting as she passed, but like many others she had passed in the halls, Luna only gave a nod of the head or a soft greeting back. Arriving at her shared quarters with her sister, Luna paused for a moment at the door before carefully opening it and slipping into the room, the sight of her sister's large golden bed being the first thing. She saw her slightly small sapphire blue bed on the opposite wall. A shelf to one side holding her sister's golden jeweler, including her crown and hoof cuffs. A section on the shelf being left empty for her own smaller crown and other body jeweler. Looking around the richly upholstered room, Luna couldn't help but smile as she saw his sister sleeping with soft, even breaths within her golden bed. Her multicolored hair still waving ever so softly, as if in a light wind, but otherwise her sister looked to be happy and sleeping peacefully compared to the first few nights of Luna's return. Her sister almost seemed like she was never going to let go, as well being even more protective of her than before. Luna also remembered the other reason why she was sleeping within her sister's room was because Celestia had woken up quite a few times and would panic when she didn't see her sister right away in the middle of the night. This panic would start a search for Luna even though she would be asleep in her own quarters down the hall. The fact that Celestia woke up her own guard and forced them to help in her search for her so-called kidnapped sister didn't help matters. Moving carefully so as not to wake Celestia, Luna came to a stop next to the golden bed and just looked at her sister, her new cloak coming up off her body and moving to and next to the shelves where she would place her hoof cuffs and other jeweler in a few moments right after she left her small surprise for her sister. Dropping down to kneel beside her sister's bed, Luna smiled at her sister's sleeping face before looking over her shoulder at the saddlebag still over her middle. The bag quickly opened up and out came a wrapped present the same size as one of the single mirrors, which was the size of one of Twilight's books. The paper it was wrapped in was covered in little moons in defiant phases, a small smile coming to Luna's face as she carefully placed the present on the small bedside table that Celestia had always used to keep a few personal items that only their mother and herself know about. The thought of her mother caused Luna to pause for a moment, a sad little smile forming as she remembered the beautiful filly that had been her mother. She could remember how her mane and tail had flowed and swilled with the light of stars and suns, as if all of the galaxy itself was woven into them all at once, while her wings looked to be made from a sort of white mist that only just hid the outline of feathers within them. Her coat had been as soft as new snow and just as white. Her eyes seemed to glow with light and color, as if the light of all creation was trapped within those orbs. Luna could also remember the night her mother had left her in Celestia. The very same night that Celestia had first raised and lowered the sun all by herself. It had only been a few years after her own birth as well. She could just remember hearing her mother whisper a filial goodbye and promise that someday they would meet again. Luna remembered waking the next morning and walking around the simple house she had been born in to find her older sister by a good dozen or more years, Celestia, crying softly within the simple living room, a letter from their mother laying to one side saying she had to go as the time of the true immortals has passed and now it was up to them to build the future of the world. After a few moments of just sitting there, ever so slightly tilting her head from one side to the other as the brushes worked, Luna's cyan eyes looking into the mirror before her. Turning her head just enough to see the saddlebags so as to lift them off and float it to one side, the second mirror, the one with the crescent moon at the top of the frame, rising up and hover before her. A small smile growing on her face as she looked at herself in the mirror, not helping but admit that she was nearly a fully grown alicorn mare, and would be quite beautiful once she finished growing back to her full power from her time imprisoned. Of course she did think that she wouldn't match her sister's beauty, but then again she had yet to meet anyone other than their mother who looked as beautiful as her sister. I still can't believe that I had de-aged and lost so much power from my time imprisoned that I went to my younger body once I got back and was freed from Nightmare Moon. At least it didn't last long. My mane and tail is much easier to handle like this than normal hair. Shaking her head of those thoughts, Luna finished brushing her mane and tail, getting to her feet as she moved towards her bed, moving the mirror to the side table, making sure it wasn't in view of her sister, until she would basically be right in Luna's bed. Looking around the room for a moment, Luna gave a small nod and whispered good night to Celestia's sleeping form before settling down into the bedsheets, a brief glow from her horn killing the light within the room as she settled down to get a few hours sleep, as like her sister Luna didn't need a lot of sleep. but they both enjoyed a good nap from time to time. The rest of the night passed with no problems for anyone within the palace. The moon carrying on its passage across the sky with no problem, as even in her sleep Luna had control over how the moon moved, and as such it was setting as normal but paused a little before dawn, waiting for Luna to give the final command to finish, lowering and carry on its path to the other side of the world, only to be summoned up again at the sunset. Not long after the moon reached its lowering point, only waiting for the beginning of the sunrise, Celestia rose her head enough to take a look at the clock on her bedside table, knowing she had to leave the warmth of her bed to use her magic to rise the sun. She knew she had to go raise the sun, but at the moment all she really wanted to do was go back to sleep, as it had been a long time since she had a lie-in. Looking around the room, Celestia paused at her sister's sleeping form, not helping but smile at the peaceful look on Luna's face at the moment. A sight she had fallen in love with once again now that Luna was back to her normal self as a peaceful and happy-looking Luna. Whether she was awake or asleep, her peaceful look did more to improve Celestia's mood more than any gift or sweet that many so-called suitors liked to try and shower her with. Giving a sigh after a few minutes of just watching Luna sleep, Celestia got to her feet and carefully and silently moved to the vanity mirror, her horn glowing with energy, as she started to work the knots and tangles out of her mane and tail, her golden crown rising up and rest on her head within a few minutes of seating down before the mirror. Humming a simple tune that she remembered her mother singing to her and Luna when they had been little fillies, Celestia paused in her brushing when she saw within the mirror the moon-themed wrapped present on her night table that she had missed when waking up. Tilting her head to one side, blowing a small lock of her cobalt blue part of her mane out of her eyes, Celestia slowly got to her feet again and starts to walk towards the bedside table, while still using her magic to keep the brushes working on her mane. A soft glow of energy around the present had it rising up to her face, as she carefully turned the simple card attached to the present, said it was from Luna, and that she hoped she liked the present she had gotten from a little shop within Ponyville. Turning her head enough to look at her sister, Celestia couldn't help but smile at the thoughtful gift. Even if she didn't know what was in it, it was still the first presents she had gotten from her sister since before her other personality, and the darkness and loneliness within her heart formed Nightmare Moon, who quickly took over her body only to be imprisoned not long after taking control. "Thank you, sister," Celestia says softly before using her magic to pull the wrapping paper away, showing the soft golden frame of a mirror, her cutie mark sun becoming viable a few moments later. The glass looked to be without a single defect, the softened gold frame catching Celestia's eye when a little light from the nearby lamp hit the rubies and ambers set into it. "Where in Equestria did you find something like this, my dear little sister? It's beautiful. In fact, I haven't seen craftsmanship of this level in years. I'm glad you like it, Tia," Luna's voice says softly from her bed, turning her head enough to look up at her older sister with a small smile, eyes still half closed in sleep. "Consider it a late birthday present for the last 1,000 years, as with it we will never truly be apart again. Oh Luna, you didn't need to get me anything, as I already have the best gift. My little sister back and able to stand by my side for all time," Celestia says, moving to Luna's side and nuzzle her neck. Gentle Luna just giving a small sigh of joy before returning the soft nuzzling. Celestia gave a laugh as she nods her head in agreement, as it had been a long time since she had had something as simple as toast and jam for breakfast. But that would have to wait, as she had a job to do and a bathroom to regain control of. She couldn't have Luna thinking she could take totally control of her personal bathroom after all. A few hours later, Celestia was eating breakfast while reading over any reports and such she needed to see to, including a letter from Twilight explaining what had happened the other night with Luna's visit, including the question Luna had asked about the ebony unicorn that owned the rather charming little store down the street from the library. Looking up at her sister, Celestia couldn't help but smile at the slight look of bliss on her sister's face as she slowly chewed her slice of toast with its rainbow of colored jam on it. "Sister, Twilight says she enjoyed your visit last night and hopes that you go and see her again whenever you feel like it. Also, she mentioned your question about the young stallion that owns the little magical shop within Ponyville, a rather good-looking one if I recall. Anyway, I take it was his store you got. The lovely mirror you gave me earlier." Luna looked up at her sister's comment, a slight darkening of her dark blue coat around her face before she shook her head. "Yes, sister, I did get the mirror from Harry's little store as well as the matching mirror, so now we can talk to each other from anywhere within Equestria. The instruction on the back say all you have to do is say my name at the mirror, then my mirror will give off a low glow, which I answer by saying your name. Oh, it is one of those mirrors. I have been trying to get him to tell me the spells he used to make them do that ever since he set up his store, but so far he had turned me down, saying it's a trade secret. I brought a set not long after he opened his store so I could keep in contact with Canterlot when I'm traveling from the city for some time. Celestia paused for a moment on her comment before saying softly, taking a bit from her toast. I have tried to identify the spells used on those mirrors, but something about the magic on them is blocking me from being able to find out their secrets. Oh, my little sister has a fan and now it's gone right to her head, has it? Well, I'll just have to fix that. Celestia finishes saying, waving her head a little as a number of feathers came flying out of nowhere and started to tickle the younger mare, a squeal of surprise and laughter sounding through the royal dining room as Luna tried to get away from the surprise tickle attack. One of the guards poked his head into the room at the first squeal only to shake his head and turn back to his post outside. This, however, didn't stop the maid who had also poked her head in. She stood calmly there enjoying the scene before her. After all, she hadn't seen her princess this happy and playful since she first took Twilight Sparkle as a student. All right, sister, I'm sorry, please stop. Luna cried out between her laughing, trying to bring her own magic up to take control of the feathers, but not being able to concentrate enough to do so. Celestia seemed to think on the request for a moment before smiling evilly at her sister. Who's the greatest pony in all of Equestria? Luna tried to glare at her sister for the question but couldn't as she went into another laughing fit when Celestia brought one of the feathers along her right flank right over her cutie mark, which had always been very ticklish for her. Managing to get a breath in after a few more minutes, Luna turned her head enough to look fully at Celestia, gasping out a moment laughter between laughs and giggles. You! Ha-ha! Arsis! Giggle! Please stop! Celestia seemed to think on the request for a moment before smiling and moving to her sister's side. Said sister now rolling around on the floor trying to get away from the feathers long enough to use her own magic, going by the glow forming on her horn. You're right, I am the greatest pony in all of Equestria. How kind of you to say so, my dear sister. Celestia says, raising the feathers up to hover around her head, a smug little smile forming on her face as Luna just laid there on her back, all four hooves still kicking a little in the air as she got her breath back. That was not fair, Tia. Luna says, rolling back to her feet after a few moments to catch her breath, standing up carefully while giving her sister the puppy dog eyes for the tickle attack. Maybe I shouldn't take you to see Harry and see if he is well to tell you about those mirrors and how to make them. Oh, now that is just not fair, especially after calling me the greatest pony in all of Equestria. Now come along, dear sister, we are going to pay this young stallion a visit and see if your charms are better than mine in getting the secret of those mirrors, as well as a few other items he has in that shop of his if the rumors are true. The two sisters looked at each other for a few moments before giggling and falling in fits of laughter, as it has been a long time since they had both laughed like that, as not even the near year since Luna had come back from exile. Celestia moving closer to her sister while still laughing, nuzzling her softly, whispering softly that she was sorry for what she had done again. Luna only nodding and saying softly back that she forgives her and would keep on forgiving her until she stopped blaming herself for what she had to do. Shaking her head after stepping back from her sister, Luna gave a small smile as she turns and starts towards the door, saying over her shoulder as she goes, "You better go get ready if we are going to Ponyville today, Tia. After all, the ponies are going to want to see their favorite princess, and that alone is going to add a few hours to our visit. Not to mention Twilight is going to have questions for me about her lessons and show me any spells she has learned since my last visited." The white alicorn says calmly, moving alongside Luna as the pair moved towards their quarters to get ready. But still deep down you enjoy it all and love that little unicorn just as much as you love me. Don't you, sister? Luna says, looking over her shoulder with a knowing smile, as she know that Twilight had helped fill the hole in Celestia's heart over her exile, as well as lay the groundwork for returning Luna back to normal. I do, but she could never take my little sister's place. Celestia says with a nod of her head to Luna as the pair started to get ready for the trip to Ponyville. It was coming up to midday when the royal carriage was sighted approaching Ponyville. However, because of the speed it could travel, no one had been able to get ahead and warn the town that the royal sisters were visiting. As such, it was to some surprise that Twilight looked up from her book she was reading when she heard the sound of a carriage pulling up just outside. Moving to the balcony, Twilight looked down in time to see the flowing mane of color that was her mentor Celestia, as well as surprisingly the starry night mane of Luna stepping down from the white and gold carriage. Oh, I wasn't expecting the princesses to visit today. Oh, I hope nothing bad has happened at any of my family, or am I in trouble, or have I somehow forgotten some project and the princess has decided to come herself to say I am no longer her student, were some of the main thoughts that were running through Twilight's head as she quickly had Spike send off a message to her friends in case Celestia needed the help of the Elements of Harmony wielders for some project she might be working on. Quickly rushing down the stairs and out the front door, Twilight was in time to see the mayor come running up, pausing a moment at the sight of Luna, but didn't allow that to stop her as she rushed up to Celestia's side and bows low to her. Twilight doing the same a moment later as she stands before her mentor. Rise, Madam Mayor, this isn't a formal visit as my sister, and I merely wish to see my student and also see if the elusive Mr. Night Sky is willing to talk, and maybe we can talk him into trade the secret of some of the secrets to his enchantments. Again. Celestia says, waving a hoof over the kneeling pair, both quickly climbing back to their hooves. Her head moving just enough to see some of Twilight's friends starting to arrive, but otherwise didn't comment or acknowledge their arrival. It is always nice to see you when you visit princesses, and I do hope your stay here in Ponyville is a good one. As to Harry Night Sky, he was seen heading into the forest like he always does a little after sunrise. Mayor says, stepping to one side to allow the two princesses to walk down the street towards Harry's little shop. Twilight falling into step with her mentor and friend. I always wondered where he lived, as his shop isn't big enough really for a flat above it like many of the others. Also, what do you mean, princess, when you say try and talk him into trading his enchantment secrets? Twilight says, coming to a stop beside Celestia while looking at the closed door of enchantments, the window shutters closed and the single window in the thatch roof also being closed. Mr. Night Sky is something of an enigma. He showed up in Ponyville a few months before you did, my student, and just set up shop. No pony knows anything of his past or where he came from, only that he is a very powerful unicorn pony, and that he specializes in the enchanting items, not to mention the Royal Intelligence's agency, hasn't been able to find out anything about his past beyond what you already know, my dear student. Celestia says, looking at the shop for a moment before turning again to look towards the edge of town and the Everfree forest. We have come a long way to talk with our elusive friend, and I plan on staying until we have this talk. Celestia finished saying with a wave of a single hoof to the 6 guards that had been silently following the small group, all 6 giving a single nod before turning as one and set off at a fast trot towards the edge of the forest to see if they could follow the trail of the unicorn that their princess wished to speak with. Luna and Celestia walked at a much more causal paces, both giving a nod of the head or soft greeting, when Applejack and Fluttershy, who lived the furthest from town, came into view just before the group reached the edge of the forest. They were greeted by the 2 unicorn guards, who only pointed down one of the many paths that lead into the forest, this one leading, if Luna remembered, into a section of the forest that was heavily populated with timberwolves, but that information might be wrong after 1,000 years. I can arrange some place for you to stay until sundown if you like, princess, as Mr. Night Sky isn't going to be reachable until then, I'm afraid. Mayor says, eyeing off the forest but remaining with the main group, not paying the 2 unicorn guards any mind when they walked up and reported that they had found the trail that Harry must be taking, going by how fresh the tracks were, and that the 4 Pegasus, including the captain who had come with the group, were scouting ahead. We'll hunt him down then. Go and start cutting a path, guardsman. Mayor, please don't worry about use, as we should be fine with such a large group, so please go about your business. Celestia paused for a moment in her words to the mayor before turning enough to look at Twilight and all of her friends, giving them a small smile of reassurances about going into the forest, turning to look at said place before saying with a careful and calm walk, don't worry so much, Madam Mayor, we'll be back before the moon rises. We better be, as I don't feel like raising the moon from the old palace. Luna comments, falling into step with her sister as the wielders of the elements of harmony fell into step around the 2 princesses, the darkness of the forest quickly causing the group to vanish from sight of the mayor, who could only watch the leave her sight. Chapter 3. Disclaimer. I don't own My Little Pony or Harry Potter in any way. I only own the computer I write this story. /N. I have to say I'm surprised at how much you, my fans, love this story and all my others. Please let it be noted that yes, I know there may be spelling mistakes and such within this story, but I have to say I have gotten a lot better than what I was at when I first started writing fanfiction. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy this chapter, and for those of you who might care, I have nearly finished a new chapter for Raven's Rise, hopefully within the week, so enjoy this chapter, and look forward to another update soon. Enjoy! Chapter 3 Mysteries. Everfree Forest was as ever very dark and gloomy feeling as the large group moved through the light undergrowth, the 2 unicorn guards moving ahead of the group a little now, eyes ever watching the forest and skies above them, while also keeping the undergrowth from injuring or getting in the way of their princesses. I think it's safe to say that most of the animals within this forest are going to leave a group of this size along as long as we don't go wandering off alone or too deeply into their territory. Luna says, head held high as she looks up to see 2 of the Pegasus returning to give Celestia a report on what they had found so far. Princess, we have found a well-used trail a little ahead. The others are scouting it now, but we believe that it is the path Mr. Night Sky uses daily, going by the size of the tracks and trances of ebony hair caught on some of the brushes around it. One of the golden-armored Pegasus says, hovering before Celestia when the group came to a stop to allow him to report. Excellent caption. Please rejoin your troops in the scouting of the trail. We will be following a little more carefully behind you. Celestia commands, starting to move again, everyone else falling into step around her. Luna looking up at the sky to see what the time was, as they couldn't afford to lose track of time. After all, she had a job to take care of at sundown. The group moved carefully, Applejack leading with the 2 unicorn guards, her eyes sweeping the forest carefully, while Rainbow Dash was flying overhead, reporting to the others the progress of the Pegasus guards ahead of the group. The other wielders of the elements of harmony remaining close to Princess Celestia, while Princess Luna talked softly with Twilight about her training, the young unicorn walking between the 2 princesses. All conversation stopped, however, when there was a flash of light from up ahead of the group, Rainbow Dash flying back to the group at a pretty quick speed for her, coming to a stop right before Celestia. Applejack only a few lengths behind her, while the 2 unicorn guards she had been walking with rushed ahead to see if they could spot anything. Princess Celestia, I don't know what happened, but the 4 guards were a little ahead of me when they seemed to run into some kind of invisible wall that exploded into a bright light. Before I saw them all laid it out on the ground, none of them were moving, but I could just make out that they were still breathing. Rainbow says in one breath, hovering before the white alicorn. Celestia and Luna both looked ahead of everyone at those words, both closing their eyes a moment later as their horns started to flow with power. Celestia's eyes opening wide first, Luna only a few moments behind her as they just look at the trail ahead. Those are some powerful wards to prevent intruders, yet why couldn't we detect them before now? In fact, I have never felt wards like this before, sister. Luna asks Celestia without turning to look at her older sister, eyes fixed on the point ahead of them. Nor have I, Luna, but I can feel damping ward over the main wards only just though. That is why we couldn't detect it before now. It feels weak but really is a very strong ward. Celestia comments, starting to move forward again, looking down at Twilight, who was concentrating hard on her own detection spell, while also slowly walking forward. I can feel it. Only just though. Twilight says after a few moments, her friends falling into step with her as they trailed behind the 2 princesses. The fact that you felt them at all, my student, is a good sign of your own skill in the magical arts. Most normal unicorns wouldn't notice them at all until it was too late. Celestia comments, coming to a stop just behind the 2 unicorn guards, who were on the edge of a large clearing looking down at the 4 unconscious Pegasus, but were unable to get to them because of the ward they could all feel now, and even then that was only because they were standing right next to them. The clearing was free of trees and low-ground bushes, leaving only a large stony field. A large archway in the middle of the field caught everyone's eyes as it was made from some unknown black stone. A small stream ran off to one side of the clearing, showing where fresh water was for their wayward unicorn to drink. A large tent next to the archway was the only other thing within the clearing, a cooking fire with a pot of unknown substance bubbling away just in front of the tent flap. Before the group could work on the wards that were preventing them from getting to the injured guards, a smell that anyone who had grown up within Ponyville or had spent a lot of time near any wild forest greeted the group's noses. The sound of wood grating aged would sounded a moment later as a howl sounded similarly from all around the group. Timberwolves? A lot of them. Applejack says softly, turning to stand more side on to allow her to quickly spin around and buck any that might come jump out of the surrounding trees and brush. The 2 still standing guards moving forward, their horns glowing with energy as they got ready to defend their princess should the wolves attack. We can't run as they have us surrounded by now. The only good thing is that because of the wards behind us they can't get at us from that direction, but also the ward are blocking our only possible retreat. What should we do, Princess Celestia? Twilight asks softly, her own horn glowing with energy as she got ready to defend her friends should it come to violence. Be calm, my little ponies. I'm sure they will move on once they realize we are a fairly large group. They should think twice. Celestia says calmly, an aura of light and positive energy seeming to come off of her body, calming down everyone, including Fluttershy, who had nearly gone stiff in her fear and was moments away from fainting. Before anyone could say or do anything else, a pair of glowing green eyes appeared within some of the bushes, more appearing just as quickly as a single wolf that was easily the size of Celestia herself stepped out of the darkness and bushes, his sharp wooden splinters for teeth showing for all to see as it ran forward to pounce on one of the guards, the rest of the pack only taking a moment to howl their challenge before coming out of the brush. The large wooden bodies that was the timberwolves seemed to move and blend in quickly with the forest around the group as one of the guards throw the one to lunge him into a tree with a blast of magic, the wolf slamming into the tree and breaks apart into defiant blocks of wood, only for a black like smoke to rise up from the remains, the green eyes still locked with the guard before the smoke sank back down into the remains of its body, the wood starting to slowly pull itself back together while the rest of the pack charged forward now. The fight started rather quickly as Applejack spun around and slammed her hind legs into one of the leading leaping wolf, sending it crashing into a thicket of bushes, not breaking it apart much but enough to keep it down for a few moments. The two guards worked together as a team, one of them shielding the group as best he could while his partner picked up and threw one of the wolves into another, smashing the pair to pieces while also rearing up and slamming his hooves into another. Rainbow dive bombed one of the wolves and managed to throw another one onto its back at her flyby after smashing up the one she had just dived on. Rarity stood off to one side with a simple shield spell up that Twilight had tougher, protecting both herself and Fluttershy. Twilight, on the other hand, was picking up the odd large stone around her with her magic and using them to smash and knocked back any of the wolves that managed to get around the guard's shielding spell. Pinkie Pie, however, was a surprise for everyone on how she fought. First, she pulled similarly out of nowhere a cannon. No one comment on it, as they had all seen at one time or another Pinkie pull something like this. The fact that the cannon fired party decoration also not surprising them, although they all could do without the image of a timberwolf that was a rainbow of colors and covered in ribbons. Luna watched the fight for only a few moments before she seemed to vanish into a cloud of starry mist and shoot forward, reforming long enough to buck a single hid leg into one of the larger wolves, sending it crashing into one of the floating rocks that Twilight was controlling. Not long after feeling her hoof connect with the hard wood that made up the wolf's body, Luna turned back into her mist form and started to dart around the pack of wolves until another opening presented itself. Celestia, on the other hand, didn't attack so much as defend, as a number of even larger rocks and a few fallen trees lifted off the ground and started to float around the group, a small smile forming on her face as Luna would appear long enough to either use her magic or her hooves to slam and kick the wolves into the floating objects, the two sisters falling into the combat style the pair had developed over years of fighting Discord, then King Sombra, as well as many other enemies over the century. They had lived before Nightmare Moon come into being. The group had to fall back right up Aegis the ward line, however, after a few minutes of fighting, as it looked like they had somehow gotten the attention of the largest pack of timberwolves within the whole forest, as they had smashed up a good half-dozen of them, but because of the sheer numbers that the pack had thrown at them, those half-dozen had already nearly fully put themselves back together and were even larger than before. "This isn't good, sister. They are reforming faster than we can take them apart, and we are both out of practices when it comes to combat." Luna comments, reforming next to Celestia after knocking one of the wolves off of the attacking guard, giving him time to get behind the barrier that Celestia had just thrown up to buy the group some time to think on what to do given the overwhelming numbers the enemy was throwing at them. The wolves seemed to take a few moments to look over the group, the few still putting themselves together, quickly finishing up on as the whole pack started to move forward, teeth bared and ready to rip and tear into the group. They came to a stop, however, when one of the larger wolves seemed to catch on fire and was quickly burned to ash within a matter of moments. The rest of the pack looking at the ashes of their pack mate before looking over behind the group of ponies they had been attacking. What is all this then? A group of royal visitors in the middle of the day? Doesn't anyone pay attention to the fact that I run a shop during night hours? And they have even brought with them the local pests. Came an unknown male voice from behind the group, the sound of hooves clopping on the hard stone sounding a few moments later. Everyone looked over their flanks to see the ebony black form of Harry Nightsky walking calmly towards the group, a large black stone that looked to be the same as the ones used in the building of the portal in the middle of the clearing, landing with a thud, while he kept walking towards the group, a shimmering of magic over his body being all they needed to see before on his back a pair of black wings that were partly played out, the sunlight showing purplish tips along the wing's edge, his horn glowing with same shade of purple as the wing tips. A creak sounded a moment later, a whip made from fire appeared at his side and lashed forward, passing the group and wrapping around the neck of another timberwolf. Harry seemed to look at the wolf he had caught before giving an evil-looking smile, showing that his teeth were a little pointed and not flat like a normal pony's. In fact, everyone had a momentary flash of Nightmare Moon with her own pointed teeth. But then again, Harry's smile wasn't as threatening, more a case of someone who was going to enjoy themselves in the coming activate. He pulled the whip back sharply, pulling the wolf's whole head off and burning it to ash, leaving behind a large wooden body that quickly fell apart, the black mist that normally rose up from a fallen wolf not raising this time. "Ah, the thrill of combat, it's been a while," Harry says softly, suddenly jumping forward, giving a single flap of his wings to land in front of the group, the whip lashing around to creak just above the head of the leading wolf, the whole pack backing up not so much as at the sound as at the flames. Both Luna and Celestia could only watch as this alicorn that wasn't a member of their family seemed to duck and weave around the timberwolves, his hooves lashing out to either kick back or knock down any wolves that got close to him, while the whip sliced though a few of the other members of the attacking pack. "Sister, have you gone and given me another niece or nephew while I was imprisoned for 1,000 years? Or is he a totally unknown alicorn and not related to us in any way?" Luna sent by a telepathic message to her sister, while also admiring Harry's sleek form and well-toned muscles, giving a shake of her head to get the images out of her at some of the things she and Harry could get up to, as in her opinion he was a fine example of stallionhood. Celestia on the other hand just gave her sister a look that clearly said no, she hadn't had another foal while Luna had been imprisoned. That happened one time, and please note that your original niece died a long time ago, and that I have been tracking her line all this time, and this young stallion isn't within that line at all. Now let's just see what we can learn, as it looks like the wolves are leaving. Also stop drooling, sister. Celestia comments back to his sister, stepping forward at the same time locking eyes with Harry, who was now slowly walking up to the group, the whip he had been wielding vanishing in a puff of smoke. Harry looked around for a moment after the last of the wolves had ran off into the forest, not willing to face him in a fight after he had burned to ash the leader of the pack. His mind quickly went to the problem of the fact that he had reviled himself as an alicorn to everyone here within his clearing. He known he couldn't help it if his masking spell just happened to run out when he had first approached the group, and he hadn't had time to redo the charm before coming to their aid. But it was still pain in the fact that it chose right that minute to wear off. Well, I guess I have some questions to answer, and you all look like you could do with something to eat, he says softly, walking past everyone, his horn giving off a purple glow for a moment before the wards become viable for just a moment, then vanished again from sight. You can cross the line now, so please follow me and I'll answer what questions I can. Luna was the first to walk across the invisible line, her head held high as she goes. Her eyes, however, were on Harry with a slight spark of interest at what he was building in the middle of the clearing, as well as just the pony himself. Celestia saw the way her sister was looking at Harry, and couldn't help but give a small laugh, as she knew Luna was hoping to get to know this young alicorn very well, and maybe learn some of his secrets in one of three ways more than likely, one such way not being suitable around foals or even young ponies for that matter. Rarity looked around the clearing for a moment, moving a little closer to the archway, then the others for a moment, making a note of the gemstones and strange writings carved or placed within the stone. The whole archway giving off a feeling of power, but also seemed to lack it, as if it was charging but hadn't enough to do what it was built to do. Her attraction going to the tent, however, when she saw the flap open for a moment, a full living room far larger than the tent itself, only viable for a moment from her angle. Oh my goodness, what a lovely tent you have here. How did you get it so large on the inside? Rarity asks, moving forward and lifting the tent flap with her own magic, looking inside for a moment before looking over her flank at Harry, who was slowly turning a wooden spoon within the bubbling soup of mixed vegetables. Enchantments from my homeland mixed with a little I have learned since coming to Equestria, Harry says, turning his head enough to look at the lavender-manned unicorn with a small smile. Turning back to the pot, he gave a nod before moving his head a little from side to side as a number of bowls came floating out of the tent, arranging themselves around the fire as a ladle started to serve the soup to the 8 main guests as well as himself. It might not be much, but it will have to do, and I hope you like it, my dear Fee, Harry says, offering a bowl to everyone's surprise and going ageist tradition when both princesses sat down to a meal. He gave the first bowl to Luna, then Celestia. Do let me know if you want anything added to it, he comments after everyone had a bowl before them, those who could use magic using a spoon to eat the soup slowly. Harry himself, however, waved his head back towards the tent as a small tray with sliced cuts of cooked meat of a whitish color of all things came forward as he dips the pieces in the stew and eats them slowly. Oh my, you eat meat? I thought only the griffins and dragons do that sort of thing. Although I suppose there are others out in the world of Equestria who might do the same thing, but I haven't met anyone yet save for griffins and dragons, and even then, Pinkie Pie says in surprise, looking at the white cubes of meat, still talking and carrying on as everyone started to tune the hyperactive pony out. Everyone, however, was watching as Harry raised one cube to his mouth and crewing it calmly without showing any sign of being sick like most ponies would be. I don't eat it often, but from where I am from, meat is a part of everyone's diet, or it was a part of mine. But trying to find an animal that isn't intelligent that I can farm for food has proven to be very difficult. Lucky the local fish meet that requirement, Harry comments, going for another cube of meat only to have it snatched from his magical hold on it as Luna brought it to his own mouth, a mischievous smile on her face as she gave a dramatic sigh and chew of the meat while looking at her slightly greening sister, who hadn't been the one to oversee the treaties with the Griffin tribes back in the beginning days of their rule over Equestria. And griffins, like ponies, like to throw celebrations for any new thing to happen. As such, she had to eat a little meat at every single one she had to attend or chance insult to the tribe. I don't see anything wrong with wanting a little change of diet every now and then, my dear Mr. Night Sky, though my sister might disagree with us on that front. Luna says after she finished teasing her sister with her overdoing it of eating a second cube of meat. Harry is just fine, my dear Fee. In fact, all of you can call me Harry if you want. Harry paused here to see everyone give a nod of understand and agreement to call him by his first name. Now I'm sure you all aren't here to talk about my eating habits. You want something, otherwise you would have waited until sundown and then see me in my shop. Harry says, turning back to look at Celestia, who wasn't the only one looking a little sick at the sight of him, and Luna eating the meat cubes calmly. Indeed, we are here for something, Harry, but first I must ask, what is it you are building here, and why haven't I ever seen your wings before now? Celestia asks, putting her bowl down after finishing the last of the rather tasty vegetable soup. Her thought going back to other times she had seen Harry in passing within Ponyville, and she didn't recall seeing wings on him those times. As to the wings, I use a masking spells, as I hadn't seen many ponies with both a unicorn horn or Pegasus wings, and I didn't want to be thought of or treated like a prince. I decided to did my wings until such time as I was either found out or completed my little project here. Hiding the wings also allowed me to do my little business without anyone asking too many questions on how I made my items. After all, a unicorn making magical items is rare, yes, but not uncommon. And the arch? Twilight asks, getting to her feet after finishing her own bowl of soup, walking slowly while scanning with her magic the black stoned archway head, tilting to one side before turning to look over her flanks to see what Harry would say. That would take some explaining, but I will say this much: it's not so much an archway as a bridgeway to cross something much more grand than a river or riven, or that is what I am trying to build if I only had the magical power to get those runes to fully charge, but it is slow going with only myself charging it. What are you trying to cross if it isn't a river or riven? Applejack asks, walking to circle the archway now with the others only a few steps behind her. The two princesses, however, remained seated near the small campfire, Luna watching Harry as he slowly got to his feet, while Celestia was looking over the portal from her seat, making a note of some of the runes, as she wanted to see if the great magical library back in Canterlot had anything on these runes. What do you Fias know of parallel dimensions? Harry asks, waving his head a little as a section of the earth rose up to form a flat surface. Two circles appearing on the surface. A moment after that, one had the name Equestria under it, while the other had simply Earth written there. Oh. I know nothing. Pinkie Pie says, jumping up and down only to stop dead and seat down, one of her front hoofs tapping her chin in deep thought. The others all giving a nod of agreement, as they know nothing about parallel dimensions. In theory, if one had the magical power, you can travel between worlds where something is always defiant from our own. For example, one world might be where Discord wasn't defeated by myself and Celestia. Another where a defiant race may have risen up to be top of the ladder and we ponies might be near the bottom. And yet another where Celestia here might have fallen to her own darkness within and was banished instead of me. Of course, all of this is in theory. Luna says calmly, getting to her hooves now and moving to look over the archway that Harry calmed to be a bridge, and going by the images on the smooth section of earth raised to one side, he believed that he could successfully bridge the void between two parallel worlds. Very good, my dear Fee, but I have to say it isn't a theory, as I am not of this dimension, and I am only in this one because of a power-mad dark wizard with abandonment issues not wanting to chance a fourth loss in a row to me. Harry says, turning to fully face the group. Now the campfire flaring for a moment as the image of something started to appear in the flames. I'm about to show you what I looked like before arriving on Equestria. Everyone looked at the fire for a moment only to step back or just look at the bipedal figure within the flames. It had short cut hair on its head only and stood upright. The two arms, instead of hooves like a pony, it had 5 varying length digits. Its hair was the same ebony black as Harry's mane and body, as well as matching emerald green eyes, only the image's eyes had a pair of glasses perched on its nose. What a odd-looking race. I take it that this is you before you came here, meaning this is what a stallion looks like for your species? Twilight asks after circling the fire with the image within it still. Is that what we would look like if we went to your world, Harry? Rarity asks, circling the image this time while the others step back. If so, then I would have to rethink all of my fashion designs, as they would never do. Not to mention that it is clear your people wear cloths all the time and not just for special functions and parties. Follow me and take human form on Earth. Harry says with a small smile as he looks at the image of Hermione Granger, one of his oldest friends. He couldn't help but hope that what that pony he had met while lost in the void between worlds was right, and that she had managed to throw him backwards in time to a year or so back to before he had been thrown into the void, allowing him a chance to get back home and finally defeat Voldemort without having to fight his way through a whole army, hopefully. Although he had since learned that time had no meaning within the void, and he could have been trapped there for countless years before stumbling onto the white alicorn with the light of galaxies within her mane and tail. Celestia could only nod at what Harry had said so far, as he was right. Defiant world meant defiant rules. She looked at the image for the human girl before turning to look at the archway. The possibilities of this portal are great indeed, and not just trade value but also knowledge. But we could also be letting in trouble that Equestria doesn't need, going to have to play this carefully. She thought to herself before saying softly, while turning her head enough to look at Harry. I am willing to make a deal with you, Harry. In return for me helping you build and charge this bridge of yours, I would like the secrets of your mirrors and most of your other enchantments you are selling in your store, as well as your promise that nothing will be brought through this portal that could be termed a threat to the ponies of Equestria. Harry looked at Celestia for a moment before slowly getting to his feet and walking to the archway. I'll show you what I have to go through just to charge this portal a little, and then you can decide if you want to help, but I can say this much: I won't let anything through that could harm this world, as I have to admit I have grown to like the ponies here and hope to remain here after I have dealt with my Dark Lord problem back on my world. Walking to stand before the archway, his horn started to glow with the same purplish glow as before, the runes all over the archway starting to glow themselves a few moments later, but not as brightly as his horn. After a few moments he dropped to lay down, head lowering a little as the rune's glow faded quickly. Not that any of the ponies in the clearing saw as they all rushed to his side. That took everything I had, and I only moved the charge if I was lucky 1%. Still over 60% needed to bridge the gap, and even then, it's only one way until a second archway is built on the other side. And by showing use this you also show how much more power is going to be needed, far more than even Celestia's or my own combined in one powerful hit. It would take both of you months to charge this device if we also want to have the power to carry out our duties. Luna says, dropping down to the ground next to Harry, using her magic to angle his head to rest on her neck, as she could clearly see it was taking everything he had to keep his head upright at the moment. That is why I have been charging it slowly by myself. This is why I didn't share the secrets of my enchantments, as I need the money to buy the right kind of gems. And that isn't even counting the mithril I need to reinforce the runes to hold magic better. After nearly a year of business I have only just managed to buy 2.5 bars of that metal, and it isn't anywhere near enough for this project. Harry finished with a sigh as his eyes started to close, showing how tired he was now after the use of what was left of his magic from crafting the other night. Celestia looked at Harry for a moment before turning her head a little to look at her sister, who just looked back at her. Nodding her head once, Celestia turned to face the archway again, and took a more steady stance, his head slightly bowed as her whole body seemed to start to glow with a soft golden light. I'll arrange for the mithril and gems to be brought to you, Harry, and provide what energy I can when I can, and in return you provide the rune language you are using and how to make your enchantments, as well as your oath that none will use this portal save yourself until such time as a true peace can be reached between our two worlds. A far trade, I would say, wouldn't you? Harry looked at Celestia in surprise at the offer, as the information he could offer them wouldn't be anywhere near enough for the amount of mithril and gems he still needed, not to mention the magical power she was offering. That alone would have been more than enough for the rune language. He only no thanks to the white alicorn. He had met in the void, removing the piece of Voldemort in his scar, leaving all of his knowledge for him to work through. I to well help in the charging of this archway, as I must say it might be nice to see your world and learn a whole new style of magic. Luna says, getting to her feet and moving to stand next to her sister, her body like Celestia's starting to glow with a soft cobalt blue. That is too much just to open the portal. My knowledge of runes and enchantments would only be worth a small part of everything you're offering me. Harry says sharply, trying to get to his feet, only to fall back down again after only a few steps, head bowing in defeat at how weak he was now. He should have known that showing them how much he was drained after only charging a single % of the archway wouldn't have stopped the two princesses from doing what they were doing. To gain a whole new world and style of magic, as well as possible trade at our hoof tips, we are willing to pay this price. Now you just lay there and rest. Celestia says as a beam of energy left her horn and struck the archway, the whole thing starting to glow, and not just the runes like they had done for Harry. Luna only nodded her head before adding her own magic to her sister's, the whole arch being bathed in gold and blue light now. The archway isn't finished yet, don't put too much energy into it or it might self-destruct, and that would mean a year's worth of work lost. Harry says, head falling forward only to land on a throw pillow that Rarity had summoned from within the tent to catch his head. I wouldn't worry about that, Harry. I'm sure Princess Celestia will stop before anything can happen that shouldn't. Now you just lay there and rest. I'm sure Rarity would enjoy talking to you about some of your clothing options you have for sale within your store. Twilight says, smiling down at Harry, who just looked at her for a moment and then nodded. A few minutes later, Harry, having just told Rarity that yes, he had been the one to head into the normal fields, she looked for gemstones for her designs, and yes, he used them in his own designs and enchantments. The two princesses stopped feeding magic into the archway. Everyone, even the earth ponies who had the weakest magical scenes, could all feel the energy rising now from the archway, yet still it didn't feel complete. Hanging within the archway near its center was a small warping of the air that seemed to be trying to change from the color of the sky seen on the other side to something darker, almost like a section of the night sky was trying to come into being within the archway. It's a little under 50% charged if I'm reading these levels right. Not bad considering the archway isn't complete yet. Luna says after the two princesses stopped feeding magical energy into the archway. She had to admit that bringing the archway up another whole 10% in the last few minutes had taken a lot out of her, and she could only wonder how long Harry had been building this thing to get its energy levels to the level he had. It's going to take me a few weeks to finish up the archway, enough for you both to add more power to it. Also, Princess Celestia, I accept to the deal and will start writing up one of the written language of my world as well as the runic alphabet to add to your library. I'll also draw up the rune array needed to make the communication mirrors as well as most of my other stoke. Celestia gave a nod to this before walking over to her guards who had been standing off to one side waiting for orders. We are heading back now. Caption. I would however like for a few guards to remain within this clearing to make sure nothing happens to this archway until it is finished. There is no need for that, princess. My wards are more than a match for anything within this forest, and anything that could breach them is mostly on the other side of the forest, so I'm safe and well protected. Harry says, still laying on the ground, his head held up now as he watched the Razor of the Sun give orders. Then I'll leave it all in your hooves. Do contact me through my student for when you are ready for another magical bust to the power. Celestia says, starting to walk towards the trail back to Ponyville, the others save Luna falling into step around her. Planning on staying a little while longer, sister? She asks on noticing the missing cobalt blue alicorn. Just long enough to make sure he gets into bed and stays there. Luna says, using her magic to lift Harry to his feet and then move to his side, helping gild the wobble-legged alicorn to his tent. Go ahead, sister, I'll be fine. Luna called over her flank as the tent flap was pulled aside and the pair vanished from sight. Why do I have a feeling I'm going to see very little of my sister for a little while? Celestia asks herself while leading the group away from the clearing, thinking on everything that had happened so far this day, and on the new knowledge that would be available to her and all of Equestria in the coming weeks. Of you like this story, as I didn't think any of my fans would enjoy it and I would be facing all new fans or critics, but I'm glad you all seem to be enjoying this FIC and don't mind the long wait between chapters, as I am trying to write the next chapter of Wolf, Songstress and Dragon Lords all at once. Need to really only work on one of those at time more, I think. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy this chapter and leave lots of reviews. Also thanks to those who point out where I got to work wrong, as I was able to go back and fix some of those mistakes. Enjoy! Chapter 4. Gossip. The next few months passed without much happening in Ponyville save Spike, hitting his greed phase of his dragon growth and tearing apart half the town on his its mine, and no one else. Speech to everyone's surprise, however, he hadn't been able to touch the enchantment store as Harry stood on the front step, his horn glowing with energy as a field seemed to cover the store, protecting it from the rampaging dragon. Also within that time, Mare Duell made her appearances and provided much fun and laughter for both Harry and Luna, who had basically moved into Harry's shop at night to read over his notes and learn the language of his homeland. Harry often finding her asleep or so deeply involved with one of his notes to not notice the time, while staying conformable in front the large fireplace off to one side of the store at closing time a little after midnight. Harry still couldn't help but laugh a little as he remembered the fun and games within the town when Twilight, Fluttershy, Applejack and Pinkie Pie decided to teach Rainbow Dash a lesson in humility just to get the Pegasus to stop bragging and generally be a pain in the ass with her ego. Both he and Luna had been seating on the rooftops watching as Rainbow ran and flew all over the place trying to catch Mare Duell, the pair nearly falling over laughing at the sight of Twilight and her friends timing their runs and disappearing acts, with Rainbow getting anger and anger every time one would vanish only to seemingly appear behind her. Although Harry didn't know it at the time, but later on that evening, after Rainbow had agreed to tone it down on her bragging and Rarity had put the costumes in storage only to report it later on that they had been stolen. Harry not hearing of this until he had Luna show up in his store after moonrise in the Mare Duell costume and asked him if it looked as good on her as it did on Twilight and her friends. Of course, after admitting that she looked just as good if not better in the purple and blue costume, Luna had gone off into the night with a giggle to do some helping of everyone, much like Twilight and the others had done. She had kept on doing this once or twice a night since, much to Harry's amusement, as it was driving the mare six up the wall on trying to work out who had stolen their project. Last thing he had heard on that front was that there was now a Mare-do-well comic book that was proving to be a bestseller inside of a week of it being made, this only adding to the Mare 6 complaints on trying to find out who was the new Mare-do-well. Shaking his head at the memories, Harry moved around his store, pausing at the sight of Luna, who was taking the night off from saving ponies around Canterlot and Ponyville. Seating down in front of the fireplace, reading his notes on runes from England floating before her, the starlit night mane and tail as always flowing and rippling like water, her head slightly bowed as she read and sounded out the runic alphabet, as well as talking every now and then to herself a French-like accented form of English. Luna, I'll be in the back room crafting those collars that couple wanted. Would you mind looking after the store while I work? Prices and such are on the items, and no, I don't haggle. The prices are fixed, just so you know. Harry asks, looking down at Luna, who just blinked at him for a moment in surprise at the request, but gave a nod and raised to her feet, moving around to stand behind the counter, her scroll she had been reading following along like a loyal puppy. No problem, Harry, but afterwards we are going to sit down and work on my English, okay? Luna states in Equestria Common, Harry only nodding before moving through the only other door in the building besides the front door, his workshop that also doubled as a storeroom for most of his stock. Settling in to carry on her reader, as very few ponies ventured out more than a few hours after sundown, Luna carried on sounding out words and even drawing a few of the simple runes in the air with her horn to learn their shape better. Luna had only been reading for another hour when a small bell above the open door rang, thanks to a little spell to make it ring whenever someone walked in the front door, even if it was open. Twilight walking into the store with a tired smile on her face as she gave a nod to Luna. Having a good night, I hope, Princess Luna. I just stopped by to see if Harry had any more notes for me to look over, as well as let him know that he's invited to Grand Galloping Gala that is coming up, or have you already told him that? Twilight finishes, saying with a slight tilt of her head and large yawn. I have let him know, and I believe he is going to see Ms. Rarity when she opens up Carousel Boutique in the morning and get something sorted out for the evening. Luna answers, looking up from her scroll, waving her head a little to float over to Twilight a number of other scrolls. Those I have read and have made sure there aren't any mistakes spelling-wise, as he is still learning to write in Equestria Common and makes a few mistakes every now and then. I'm sure Rarity will take good care of him. I have to say, though, that he is very popular with the mares in town ever since he stopped hiding his wings, so it could be interesting to see if he goes alone to the gala. Twilight says, taking the scrolls and putting them in her saddlebag that Luna hadn't noticed before, a number of other scrolls she had been reading before coming up to land on the counter before the princess. That is, of course, depending on if he hasn't already asked a certain princess to accompany him as a date. I will have you know he has not, but it might be nice to spend the gala with someone I can at least talk to without them falling over in fright. But I'm sure one of the other mares in town or at the gala will talk him into becoming their date. Luna says back, her eyes dropping a little in sadness at the thought of Harry, who had quickly become her best friend, going to something like the gala without her by his side. We were just talking about the coming gala and was wondering if any mare had caught your eye, was all. Twilight says, giving Luna a small nag with her shoulder before turning to leave the store. I'll just be going now, as I have what I came for. Have a good night, Harry. See you at some point tomorrow, more than likely. Watching the younger Fee leave the shop, Luna couldn't help but give a small smile before turning to face Harry, her eyes locking with his for a moment before she took a deep breath and stepped towards, her head held high as she says in her soft tone, yet also as formal as she could sound without going royal, Canterlot voiced. My Lord Night Sky, would you accept the honor of being my partner for the upcoming gala at Canterlot? Luna finished with a small bow of the head, but otherwise kept eye contact with Harry, whose eyes had widened a little in surprise at the request, but otherwise he don't show any other signs of being surprised. You know, on my world it's the guys who ask the girls out, but I think I'll let it slide this one time. Harry says after a few moments to think on her request and to also get his thoughts in order after her sudden question. Princess Luna, I would be honored to escort you to the gala. Then I look forward to meeting you within the main entry hall. Until then I think I'll remain in the palace to make ready for the day, as it is only a few weeks off. Luna says, turning and walking rather slowly towards the main door, an extra swing of her tail being all Harry needed to see to know that she was very happy with herself at the moment. Little minx. Harry muttered to himself, taking up his post at the counter, leaving the work he was doing for later when he closed the shop. That had been one thing that Luna and the Wilder of the Elements of Harmony had managed to do, and that was change Harry's opening hours. Now the store opened at a little after midday every day and closed a little after midnight every night. The next day was bright, and as always Ponyville was full of life and activity. What little cloud cover there was quickly taken away by a fly-by of the Pegasus. It was this calm that greeted Harry as he entered the town, his ebony wings giving a few flaps as he landed on the edge of town after flying out of the Everfree forest. Turning his head from side to side, Harry gave a nod of greeting some of the ponies who had paused on his arrival. Turning in one smooth move, he started to slowly walk up the street, his eyes fixed on Rarity's boutique, as he needed to get something a little more formal for his evening with Luna in a few weeks' time, and as much as he hated the thought of spending hours under Rarity's care, he knew that she was his best chance for getting something that would match with Luna evening gown she had more than likely had made by now. He was only a little way from the boutique when he walked in front of Sugarcube Corner. Coming to a stop for a moment, Harry looked at the gingerbread-looking shop before giving a nod and entered the store, nimble dancing around the twins' pound cake and pumpkin cake as he entered, fully ducking his head to avoid the low-flying foal, his horn giving off a glow a moment later as pound cake suddenly found himself flying only a few inches off the ground and not at the insane speeds he shouldn't be flying at his age. That should keep you out of trouble and make it easier for your parents to keep you in line, little guy, Harry says with a small smile at the look that pound cake was giving him. Stepping around the pair, he walked up to the main counter, nodding his head to Mrs. Cake. "Morning, Mrs. Cake. Any chance of a half-dozen of your special cupcakes, as I have an appointment with Rarity soon and I thought I would offer something that would hopefully be enough of a peace offering to get what I want and not what she wants. Is a half-dozen going to be enough for her to let you have a say in the design of your suit?" Mrs. Cake says with a smile as she carefully puts a half-dozen green frosted cupcakes into a box, one hoof shooting out to pull little pumpkin cake back from the kitchen doorway. "More than likely not, but a guy could dream, can't he?" Harry says with a laugh, taking the box carefully and placed it on his back between his wings, a number of coins floating up from a small pouch on a chain around his neck coming to rest on the counter. "That is all you can hope for, dearie. Also, I have to ask before anyone else does, but is what Gabby Gums says in the full free press true? That Princess Luna is seeing you as her special someone and that you invited her to be your data for the gala?" There was also a few other things mentioned, but not something I would talk about in well-mannered company. "What was that?" "Princess Luna and I are not seeing each other, yes, but nothing romantic yet. Also, I am too much of a gentleman to talk about her private life or my own like that, let alone to a newspaper run by foals," Harry says, turning his head enough to look over his flanks, the narrowing of his eyes telling Mrs. Cake all she needed to know on what he thought of that particular little gossip column. "I'll be sure to let my other customers know that and try to cut down on the rumors around town before Princess Luna finds out. She was scary enough on Nightmare Night, don't need her turning the town into ash on us." "Might be a good idea," Harry says, leaving the store, making a note of the 3 cutie mark crusaders looking rather proud of themselves, walking by, all of them pausing at everyone who had a copy of the full free press. Why do I have a feeling that you 3 are behind our unknown Gabby Gums? Oh well, they'll work out that they are causing trouble and hopefully learn a lesson from it," Harry thought to himself while moving down the street, giving a nod of greeting to anyone he passed. Arriving at Carousel Boutique without any problems save the odd mare asking if the rumors were true about him and Luna, which he quickly set straight that they were just friends at the moment and no, she wasn't with foal and he was the father. That one nearly had him ready to go to the school and fry the edited of the paper for even considering allowing that story at all. He would pity the foal though when Luna found out and made her opinion known to the whole town. "Harry darling, what a lovely surprise. What can Carousel Boutique offer you this fine morning?" Rarity asks with a smile as Harry enters her boutique, her smile only growing as Harry moved the box of cupcakes from his back to before her. "If you accept those cupcakes, you agree to not do a outfit that is going to outshine my data to the gala coming up. Deal?" Harry says with a smile as he walks over to look over one of the racks of cloths that Rarity always had set up to one side for possible customers who didn't want a custom-made outfit. Rarity just looked at Harry for a moment before giving a laugh and nods her head, moving over to her small workstation off to one side on the main floor, saying as a measuring tape rose up, her working glasses floating up to rest on her nose as well, along with a pad and pen. "Agreed, darling, and now let me just get your measurements before we start to create something that will have all the Maras drooling over you," Rarity finished saying, guiding Harry to stand before a wall of mirrors and started to look over his pure ebony coat and mane, trying to work out what she could use. An hour later, Harry looked at himself in the mirror as he took in the sight of him in a white ruffled shirt with a black vest over the top of that, the vest having a fine deep red scroll work woven through the front part with a simple black belt with a silver buckle and some more of the red scroll work stitched into the belt leather. You look good, darling. If you give me a few days to get everything together and make some minor modification, you will be stunning, and I can guarantee you that Princess Luna will want only you by her side all night long, no matter who approaches her. Rarity says, circling Harry's slowly moving cloth if it didn't seem to be setting right by her standards, or in some cases pinning it down to fit his chest better. Just as long as you don't add jewels to the outfit, I'll be happy, Rarity. Harry was cut off by a overpowering voice sounding from just overhead, both of them rushing to the window while listening to Luna's voice bellow in the royal Canterlot voice. I demand to speak with this Gabby Gums within the hour. Ponies of Ponyville fail to do so will result in my great displeasure and punishment on your town. Bring this fowl to the enchantment store within the time frame, or my promise of punishment will come true. Why on all of Equestria is she using my store as the meeting point? Why can't she lose her temper in the town hall or even the library? Just anywhere but my store. Harry says, not paying Rarity any mind as she started to lift his outfit from his body and onto a nearby mannequin. I don't know, Harry, but maybe you should get to your store fast and see if you can calm her down a little before she does something that she'll regret later, to whoever Gabby Gums is. Rarity says, giving a wave of a hoof for Harry to leave, shouting out that his outfit would be ready in a few days and that he should come and see her then as he leaves her store. Not pausing to look at all of the parents rushing to the school to find out which one of their children were responsible for brining Princess Luna down on the town in such force. Harry ran by everyone every now and then. When he came across something blocking the main roadway, he would vanish in a cloud of dark purple and black smoke, only to reappear on the other side of said blockage. Arriving at his store, Harry paused at the sight of Luna laid out calmly on a number of throw pillows that she had summoned from the surrounding houses, a glass of water hovering before her as she drank slowly, her eyes holding a spark of amusement at the chaos she had caused. Her eyes did brighten, however, on seeing Harry coming up the street, not even really pausing as he came next to her, a nod of the head to two of her personal guards being all he needed to get by them to stand at her side. Was it really necessary to scar everyone in town with those words, Luna? I swear I saw no less than half a dozen parents on a mad rush to the school to find out if their foal is this Gabby Gums. Harry states, kneeling down next to Luna, giving a nod of thanks when she levitated a second glass of water up for him to drink. Not really, but it got them all moving, and be thankful it wasn't Celestia for yesterday's article. She only laughed it off and went about her work. When she read I suddenly seemed to have a special pony in my life and that she was going to be an aunt for some reason, she nearly tore down here to find them and send them off to the royal jail. That, and see to it you wouldn't be able to father any foals ever again. You did talk her down, didn't you? Of course I did, so don't worry, you will still be able to have foals with some lucky mare at some point in the future, but you are coming to dinner at some point soon, as Celestia still wants to have words with you about seeing me in private and possible dating me. Luna finished with a carefree smile at Harry's nerves look at the thought of getting the threatening talk from Celestia, who was considered the most powerful pony in the world magical wise. I'm sure everything will be fine. You promise to protect me from your sister? Harry almost whimpered playfully as he lay down fully next to Luna, looking down the street to see Mr. Rich marching down the street with his daughter being pushed before him. It was, however, the sight of the cutie mark crusaders slowly walking forward from a side street caught his eyes quickly, as all three looked to be feeling very guilty and were very nervous as they neared Luna and his side. Always, my dear Harry, always. Now then, let's see who our dear Gabby Gums is, Luna says as Mr. Rich pushed Diamond Tiara forward. You tell the princess who Gabby Gums is this minute, young fella, and then you can get back to the school and pack up your desk, as it is clear you are not ready for that sort of responsibility. You should never have allowed half of those stories to be printed. Filthy Rich says, looked down at his daughter with a disappointed look before turning to face Luna fully and blowing deeply to her. Luna gave a nod to Mr. Rich before looking down at the pink fowl, who seemed to be trying to back up without any of the adults spotting her. The sight of the all-ebony black Ollicorn next to Luna not helping her nerves, as little was known about Harry Nightsky, only that he had resonantly come forward as the first new and unknown Ollicorn in a few decades. Well, little one, are you going to tell me who Gabby Gums is, or am I going to have to awaken Nightmare Moon and have her feed on you? Luna says, tapping her magic a little to make a almost double image of herself appear standing over her body. This double, however, looked like Nightmare Moon, and it was hissing threateningly at Diamond Tiara. It's the three blank flanks. They are Gabby Gums. Diamond screams, moving quickly to hide behind her father from the image, just about everyone else backing up a few steps at the image. Her fear didn't lessen, however, as Luna looked at her with narrowed eyes at the blank flanks comment. I'll deal with you in a moment, little fowl. But do know that if I ever hear you say those words to describe someone, I'll see to it that your cutie mark vanishes. You three over here now and explain yourselves. Luna finishes, snapping off, looking over at the three crusaders who were currently trying to hide behind Applejack and Rarity, who had shown up in the last few minutes. Apple Bloom, Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle all stepped forward slowly, feeling their sisters, in Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle's case, only a step behind them. Scootaloo's parents only a few steps behind her. Luna looked at the three foals before her for a moment before saying, while getting to her feet, "So then, my dear little crusaders, who would like to tell me why you have been printing gossip and presenting it as fact within your school's newspaper? And also why you decided to join the paper to begin with might be nice." Luna says, slowly walking around the three foals, who were now standing a little away from their parents or sisters. "We didn't mean to write such things, Princess Luna. It was just that our first story was so good that Diamond Tiara kept pushing us to write more stories like that one. And after a while we just sort of made up some things to keep her happy as well as stay within the school newspaper. We tried quieting not too long ago, and she threatened to print embarrassing photos of all three of us in the paper." Apple Bloom says, softly bowing her head, as did her two friends. "As to joining the paper, we thought we might gain our cutie marks if we become journalists." Luna looked the three over for a moment before moving to stand in front of them, a glow of magic coming over her horn for a moment before all three found themselves a deep shade of green, their manes changing to a swamp green, which then changed to another shade of green, the color circling through a wide range greens, the eyes remaining the same color. However, your punishment for spreading lies is to remain that color for a week, my dear subjects. After the week is up, you are to come to Canterlot and see me about working out what your cutie marks are, as well as work at the palace a little to finish your punishment." Luna finished saying with a small smile to the three before turning her head to look at Diamond Tiara, her eyes narrowing a little, but didn't seem to hold any hatred for the young foal, only a slight anger for letting the power go to her head. "As for you, Diamond Tiara, you are hereby banned from all school activities and management posts within the school for the rest of the school year, as well being turned this lovely shade of sick green the first saw long ago, both you mane and coat. This is punishment for allowing such stories to be written and even forcing others to write them just to sell papers." Tiara screamed in shock as she turned into a very light shade of sick green, running off with her father only bowing to Princess Luna in thanks for being so lenient with her compared to what Luna could have done to his daughter. Princess, we wish to apologize to you and everyone we wrote about in the paper. We had planned on doing that in the coming release and were willing to take any embarrassment that might fall on our flanks for quieting the paper at the same time. We're sorry. Sweetie Belle says, her two friends echoing her apologies. "Accepted, my little ponies. Now run along and find something to do, and I will see you in a week's time." Luna says with a nod of the head, the three foal, who quickly ran off to plan their next quest to gain their cutie marks, not seeming to be bothered about their now green coats and manes, before turning to face him. "Nicely done, dear, and let me just say I'm glad you didn't need to carry out any major threats today. I aim to please my dear Harry. Now I expect you to escort those three to Canterlot at the end of their week-long punishment, but until then don't pay them any mind unless they ask for something." Luna says with a smile, starting to walk away, only to look over her flank at Harry with a spark in her eyes that hinted at how happy she was at the moment. "I'll see you tonight after moonrise, my dear night sky, for dinner and star-gazing. I'll make arrangements for dinner then and see you tonight, milady moon." Harry says back, turning to open up his store a little early, not paying the crowd that was still thinning out any mind. Many of them looking at the display going on between Luna and Harry with a little surprise, as they had never seen the pair so flirty before. Chapter 5. Disclaimer. Don't own Harry Potter or My Little Pony in any way, shape, or form. /N. Another chapter written, and I must say it's a long one, or long by my standards. I do hope everyone enjoys it and my little twists on things, and such as, let's face it, there's a reasons why we do fanfiction, and that is to add our own little twists to things, so I hope you enjoy the ones I have made to this chapter and events that happen within MLP. As always, leave lots of reviews, and once again I hope you enjoy the chapter. Enjoy! Chapter 5, Canterlot. The week after Gabby Gum's last story passed with little trouble, Harry going to see Rarity nearly daily to get any adjustments done to his suit for the gala. The morning of the Crusaders' 7th day, as green monsters, as some of the ponies in town called them, found them waiting on the train to Canterlot, watching as Harry walked down the street with a suit bag carefully laid over his back, and Pinkie Pie leading a full protection detail to the train with Mr. and Mrs. Cake's creation for the baking contest being held in Canterlot. Pinkie Pie, you better have planned on having some sort of magical protection for that thing when you get on board, as I do have 3 young foals who I am sure run on nothing but sugar. Harry called out as he entered the car that would be one up from the one Pinkie Pie was aiming for. Oh, I'll but awake the whole time the MMM is on board the train and won't let it out of my sight until it is at that contest undamaged. Harry just looked at the group for a moment before shaking his head and moved onto the train, checking each of the Crusaders had a bag with everything they would need while at the palace. He refused to turn around when he heard the sound of boards being pulled out and the cries of Pinkie Pie screaming really that it was okay for them to take out the wall of the carriage and that they could easily fix it afterwards. A good hours later found Harry leaning against the window facing the platform watching as Big Mcintosh replaced the wall of the next car now that the cake was on board, as were the other three contestants' creations. All four suites in the car, forcing Harry to place a ward line over the door leading to the car to keep the three Crusaders with him and not trying to sneak a bit or two from the assorted cakes and desserts. You three just stay in your room and do something to pass the time. No need to add to the trouble that is already going on in that car with all of that boosting and inflated egos pushing around back there. Harry says, turning to look at the simple table, a scroll floating before him as he started to write down more about Earth and its laws that he knew thanks to the information dump he gained from Voldemort. The three young ponies looked at Harry for a moment before giving a nod, as it was clear to them that unlike their normal foal-sitters they know he wouldn't tolerate their normal destructive behavior and expiated them to behave while in his care or he would come up with some huge punishment. And although a week spent as a green monster had been fun, the three fillies didn't want to end up looking like something else or being turned into some outlandish color just for making their foal-sitter angry. No, it would be better to play it safe and not cause any trouble this time around. It wasn't long after Harry's comment about the egos in the next car that the train got moving, Harry not really paying it any mind as he kept on writing and muttering to himself about what he needed to get done before they got to Canterlot. The three Crusaders quickly settling down to do any homework they had as well as plot what to do next for their cutie marks. A little before sundown saw the first and only guests of the evening to come and check on Harry and his charges. Rarity walked calmly and in her elegant trot that she seemed to be able to do without realizing, Applejack only a few steps behind her. Her own movements being rather simple and to the point of someone who spent a lot of time working and needing to save energy where possible. "How's it going back here, partner?" Applejack asks, looking over at her sister who was talking with her friends while also working on her homework. Rarity moving a little closer to Sweetie Belle and asks softly if she needed any help with anything. The sisters having become a lot closer since Rarity had voluntarily entered the Sisters' Hooves social contest and nearly won it together. This didn't mean, however, that the pair still didn't have the odd fight. All quiet for no. These three I hope will go to sleep in a few hours' time so I can concentrate more on this translation of the basic transfigurations magic of my world before we get to Canterlot. Luna suddenly wants to start trying to learn some of this style of magic and I'm not sure how much time I'm going to have to teach her. Are all you Mares this demanding, or is it just my luck to have a strong-willed princess as a special pony friend? Might be your luck, partner. Anyway, you carry on with your work and Rarity and me well keep these three out of your mane. Although I have to say I'm surprised they haven't tried sneaking into the next car to try and eat some of the cakes. Applejack says with a laugh at the slightly upset looks on the three Crusaders gave her on the comment about the cakes and going to try and sneak a bit. We can't has put some kind of spell over the carriage to make sure we stay in this one and can't move towards the engine or the cakes. Scootaloo whines with a sigh at the end, just giving the ebony alicorn a narrowed-eyed look. Just making sure that when something goes wrong in that car, and yes, something is going to go wrong, as let's face it, something has to at some point. I have eliminated the three of uses as suspects. After all, I have a date waiting for me at the palace tomorrow afternoon, and you three have lessons with both princesses, as Luna was able to talk Celestia into helping sort out what your cutie marks are. The three only gave a nod before turning back to their homework, Rarity and Applejack only giving a nod before going to seat by their sister helping as needed, while also keeping an eye on Harry, who seemed to have dived into his work and totally forgotten that they were even there, going by the odd word to drift over to them as he swore and cursed a little when he mistranslated something from English to Equestria Common. He really does have a pretty bad mouth when it comes to languages, doesn't he? Rarity commented one time when he threw away the whole sheet of paper he had been working on. I think it's more he has forgotten we are here than anything. I have to admit I have been pretty bad some days when it's just me in the fields. Applejack comments back, turning back to help the Crusaders a moment later as Harry gave a cry of success at whatever he was working on. Rarity only nodding in agreement. The pair left a little after nightfall and the three young foals had gone to sleep on the single bed off to one side of the carriage that Harry conjured up for them. The young alicorn, however, remained awake, only giving them a soft-spoken good night as they walked by, his head still bowed over his work, a number of finished scrolls being piled up to one side while he kept on working. Rarity pausing long enough to wish him a good night before leaving, Applejack only giving a nod as she walks by. As Harry had said the night before, something did happen to the MMM, much to Pinkie Pie's horror. something she got over quickly and started to make up wild stories on how the 3 other bakers on board had destroyed the cake, all of them however all ended in the cake being cut up, yet it was clear to everyone that it had been eaten, or at least the bottom 2 tiers had been partly eaten. Twilight was about to take charge of the case when the door to the car leading to the train itself opened with a bang, the sight of a very upset-looking Alicorn stepping into the room with an aura of deep dark purple energy coming off his whole body in waves, being all everyone needed to see to know that he was upset about being woken up so early in the morning after the late night he had had. "This noise is going to stop right this minute, or I swear I'm going to feed you all into a flour mill, and then bake your remains into a cake and feed said cakes to the local dragon population," Harry snarled out in Royal Canterlot voice, causing just about everyone to fall over themselves to get out of range of his bellow. When in the name of Tartarus did Harry learn to use the Royal Canterlot voice? Twilight thought while pushing his mane back into place at the wind force from Harry's shouting. Going to have to ask Princess Celestia if she known when he learned it. She finished thinking to herself before focusing on Harry again, as he seemed to be calm now after scaring everyone within the car. Looking over the now silent group before him, Harry slowly walked into the room, his magical aura dying down as he started to calm down a little from his rude awakening from Pinkie Pie's wild accusations. His eyes coming to rest on Twilight and her simple Watson hat she had on for a moment before he says, pointing one hoof at her, "Twilight, on your honor as Celestia students and your magic, tell me now, did you eat any part of that cake last night?" "I did not, and I was trying to get Pinkie Pie to—" "I was hoping for a simple yes or no to the question, Twilight, nothing more. As you still have your magic and your tattoo, I know you have told the truth, and as such you are to find out what the hay happened and do so quietly or I'll carry out my threat, understood?" "I understand, Mr. Night Sky. If you like you can go back to sleep, and I'll make sure that nothing major happens until after we get to Canterlot. Also, it's a cutie mark, not a tattoo. It's a tattoo to me as cutie mark is to girly for my tastes." Harry comments looked at Twilight for a moment before giving a nod, turning to walk back to his bed and the quietly studying Crusaders, pausing at the doorway to say over his flank, "You can at least eliminate Gustave Legrand as a suspect, as I only near hooves running around last night on all 3 times Pinkie cried out over someone being in there with her, and it's clear he doesn't have hooves." Twilight just gave a nod to Harry before sending everyone back to their rooms, taking Pinkie Pie with her to search for clues at the locations she had been the night before. Moving quietly through the car, Harry was now sleeping in the glow of a barrier-like ward around his bed, being all she needed to know that he didn't want to be woken up, and had taken steps to make sure he wouldn't be for anything short of the end of the world going by its magical strength. Working with Pinkie Pie and getting the pink-coated earth pony to listen and pay attentions to something other than a party setup, Twilight was quickly able to get Rainbow Dash, Rarity and Fluttershy to all confess to taking a small nibble of the lower 2 tiers of the 5-tier cake. Pinkie Pie forgave them before thanking Twilight for lifting the top 3 tiers that had gone uneaten, as it was still good enough to enter the contest that way, the remains of the bottom 2 tiers being shared between everyone on board the train, including the 3 Crusaders, and a small amount left to one side for Harry, who was still asleep. When the train pulled into Canterlot station, Harry awoke with a large yawn. Slowly getting up, he paused at the plate with a few slices of cake on it next to his bed. Blinking once, he got to his feet fully and using his magic packed everything while sampling the cake left for him, nodding his head in approval but otherwise not saying anything. Leaving the train behind the others, Harry paused at the sight of one of Luna's personal guards waiting off to one side, his dark eyes locking with Harry's for a moment before he turned towards the station exit. Harry, knowing that he was expiated, to follow without question. Looking around for a moment, he called for the 3 Crusaders to come with him as they had to get to the palace. Arriving at the palace and being waved through the main gate and into the many halls and passageways within the palace, Harry looked around the large building and many stained glass windows all around. As they started down one of the hallways, he paused for a moment at some of the glass images all around him, but otherwise kept pace with his guard escorting him and the Crusaders to the royal wing. Arriving at the door to the royal wing of the palace, Harry stepped a little ahead of their escort to stand before the 2 guards on the door, one in Luna's dark blue, almost black armor, while the other was in Celestia's golden armor. The pair eyeing him off for a moment before stepping to one side, pushing the door open with a single knock of one rear hooves each. Once the group stepped past them, they fell into step behind the group of 4, but otherwise didn't say or do anything else. The sight of a long hallway greeted the small group with a good half-dozen doorways along one wall, while the other wall opened up onto a large garden with many French-style glass doors. The group was led forward a little until they came to the first door, a look inside showing a simple living area that seemed to be also doubling as a small meeting room. "Princess Luna, well, see you here in a few minutes, my Lord Night Sky. Please wait here for now." One of the maids will be with you in a few moments to take any food or drink requests while you wait. The guard who had met them at the train station states before leaving the room, being followed by the 2 door guards to the royal wing. Not paying the room any mind nor any of the artworks on the walls, Harry walked over to one of the large soft mats around a table to one side, laying down calmly as he looked over the 3 foals, waving one of his hooves at the mats around the table for them to come and sit down and just relax a little while they waited. All 3 quickly moving to the table after looking around at the fine artwork and such all around them. After getting some drinks from the maid, Harry calmly started to read over his notes and transfiguration information he was going to give Luna, while the 3 crusaders talked about what they might be doing to gain their cutie marks. Harry looked up when the soft chiming sound of Luna's crystal shoes started to sound from down the hallway. Luna walked into the room, a grace that was all her own, her eyes sweeping over everyone for a moment before moving to Harry's side and leaned down to give him a small kiss, which he returned without hesitation. The pair having decided to see if they could be more than friends not long after the crusaders came forward as Gabby Gums, and so far they had enjoyed the few dinner dates they had had so far. "Good morning, dear, and thanks for bringing our little crusaders," Luna says in greeting before turning to sit down next to Harry and face the 3 foals who had all gotten to their feet and bowed to her on her entrances. Looking at the 3, Luna gave a small laugh while waving a hoof to signal them that they would get back up. "Rise, you 3, and welcome to Canterlot and the palace. Please have a seat and get conformable, as I know my sister wishes to speak about learning what your cutie marks are. I will say this much though, and that is you 3 will be spending a lot of time with my sister in the coming days. I thought you were the one helping us find out what our cutie marks are, Princess Luna?" Sweetie Belle asks softly, keep her head lowered a little, but otherwise was watching the blue-coated princess closely. "I was, but my sister heard about my punishment for you 3 and thought it would better if she tried first. If you don't have your marks by the gala, you'll be handed over to me and we'll see what we can do. As such, you have 2 weeks to try, my dear foals," Luna says with a friendly smile. She didn't turn away from the 3 foals as Harry brought a single wing up over her back on reflex from the number of times they had just sat down together and just talked or taught each other new spells, either within his shop or his new cottage within the Everfree forest. Any feather comments were cut off, however, when Celestia walked into the room with a plate floating next to her with some of the cake on it, as well as a sample of the other 3 entrances to the baking contest. "I see my newest students are here and have already been told about what is going to happen, I see," Celestia says softly, taking a seat at the table, pausing to eat a little more of the cake still on her plate. "They have indeed, sister, and they have also been told that you are going to try and find out what their marks are for 2 weeks, then I take over and try. But I think you'll work out their special skills within that time, sister," Luna says with a smile to her sister, not even batting an eye at how Celestia narrowed her own eyes at how conformable Luna looked, leaning into Harry's side. "What is his wing doing draped over you like that, sister?" Celestia asks calmly. Her eyes, however, seemed to be fixed on the single ebony and deep purple-tipped wing that was laid over her sister's back and seemed to be pulling Luna closer a little when she asked about said wing. "I hadn't noticed it, Tia. Why does the fact that I have a boyfriend and you don't upset you?" Luna says with a cheeky smile as she watched her sister's face keep its from showing the slight anger she felt at Luna's words. After all, Celestia knew Luna was only trying to get a rise out of her with that comment. "No pony is good enough for my little sister, and you know this, Luna. Now please remove the wing and come with me so we can show our new students for the next few weeks the room they will be sharing," Celestia says, rising to her feet after finishing the last of her cakes, fighting the feeling of wanting to rip Harry's wing out from the joint for daring to touch her sister with it. "You know which room is yours, Harry. Just look for the one next to my personal quarters. If I use them for more than just to get ready for the day most of the time." She is still clingy and overprotective most of the time, Luna whispered softly, getting to her feet and moving to follow her sister with the 3 crusaders between them as she come even with Celestia. "Overprotective, she calls it. I call it possessive and controlling to a degree," Harry states to himself, getting to his feet and starting down to his room, knowing where it was thanks to a visit to the palace not long after Celestia and Luna had agreed to help him build the portal back to his old home, as well as help set up a trade agreement between the 2 worlds, with him spearheading this setup. For the rest of the day, Harry spent his time either sleeping a little or reading over his notes, making new ones as needed for his lessons. Luna wanted on Transfiguration, only really taking a break when one of the maids showed up to offer him a new drink or find out if he wanted anything to eat. It was a little after moonrise that Harry really stopped any work and just stood in the hallway looking out at the garden bathed in moonlight, the silvery light reflecting off the large pond within the garden adding to the almost mystical feel of the landscape, the way the light seemed to reflex of the pond adding a silvery glow to the whole garden and make some of the flowers within look to be made from nothing but moonlight. She seems to have put in a little extra for tonight's sky. Everything seems to be a little brighter. Celestia says softly, coming to a stop next to Harry, looking out over the garden. One eye however looking over Harry, taking in the slightly tired look around his eyes, but also the hint of great power and knowledge locked deep within those emerald green orbs. You may have been able to control the night for a time, my dear princess, but Luna can make the sky and stars themselves dances to her will. Harry says with a small smile, just looking at the twinkling night sky. I have always found the night safe and comforting. Ever since I came to this world, it has only grown to a deep love for it. That is one of the reasons why my store is open at night. I get to enjoy the stars and moon without having to worry about others bothering me. That could be why I find myself falling for her so quickly. She embodies the very night sky that I love so much. That may be so, Harry, but I do have to say I'm not ready to let my sister go. I lost 1,000 years of time with her because of the darkness within her and my own stupidity for not listening to her simple request. I won't lose another 1,000 years because she become Nightmare Moon again just because you broke her heart. I hope you can understand where I can coming from, Harry. Celestia says softly, tuning her head just a little to see the ebony alicorn out of the corner of one eye, his eyes remaining locked however with the moon overhead. You would have to get in line for any punishment, princess, as Luna herself would make sure I was a gelding within minutes of upsetting her. What would follow next would more than likely involve asking the Mare 6 to use the elements of harmony and shoot me off to the moon or something, and all of that is only if she is feeling in a good mood for punishing me for hurting her feelings. If I was in a bad mood should he hurt my feelings, sister, I'll have him fired into your son with the help of the Mare 6, and that would happen after I had removed all traces of his stallion hood and wings with a very dull knife. Came the sharp comment of amusements that could only come from Luna when she was in a very good mood, both turning their heads enough to see the blue alicorn walking towards them now, having spoken from just outside of the main doors to the wing. Why a dull knife? Why can't it be something nice and sharp if it's gonna happen, dear? I really don't want to feel a lot of pain. Harry says softly, taking a few steps to one side to allow Luna to step in between him and Celestia, who seemed to be thinking on Luna's promise of pain he would suffer should he ever hurt her. The white alicorn not helping but nod in agreement with her sister on the suitable punishment Harry would suffer should he upset Luna. It will hurt more, and make sure you learn your lesson. Don't worry though, Harry, I would only have you burnished to the sun for a few years, then bring you back and repair any and all damage I did to you. Luna says with a small kiss to his neck. Why is he getting burnished to my son? Your moon would be so much easier, not to mention there is a chance he could get burned to nothing, as it's not really a cool place to visit it if you're not me. Celestia asks, tilting her head to one side as she looked at the pair, a slight narrowing of the eyes, all Harry needed to see to know that he better not get any closer to Luna while Celestia was there. Do you really think I'm going to send someone who managed to get me that anger to the very symbol of my power? Luna asks back. Celestia seeming to think on this question for a moment before giving a nod in agreement with Luna, as she couldn't see herself sending someone to her son if they had upset her that much, so why would Luna do that with her moon? If you two are going to do nothing but compare notes on how to punish me, I'm going to go to bed and get the complete list in the morning. That and start Luna's lessons on transfiguration at the same time I get this list. Harry states in a mock hurt tone, turning away from the two sisters who were giving small giggling like sounds at his chosen tone. Isn't he cute when he tried to act all high and mighty as well as tries to make me feel guilty for picking on him? Luna says, falling down in full-blow laughter now as Harry raised his head high and almost marches off to his quarters. Not really my type, dear sister, but if the pouting stallion is going to become your type, I guess I'll have to accept it. Celestia says with a sigh, watching as Harry moved away. Her eyes seeming to lock with his back, almost as if she could burn into his back, a warning of not to hurt or upset her sister. Know your type is a minor noble unicorn that have a lot of magical energy. Seeing said unicorn without telling me, and then waking me up in the middle of the night with a scream of pain a number of months after you spend a number of nights out of the city on business trips as you called it. The cries of pain being mostly you promising to castrate the young stallion. The end result of that night, after I called for a doctor, was you giving birth to my niece, who unlike us wasn't immortal. Although I have since leaned on returning to my duties, you have been kept track of her family line, which has ended so far with Princess Cadance's birth and ascended to her current form. Luna states with a look on her face that clearly stated that she was still holding a slight grudge against Celestia for falling pregnant all those years ago, and not telling her or even telling her that she had fallen in love with said noble. Well, when you say it like that, it doesn't sound good at all, and I was a lot younger back then, Luna, so could you please not tell anyone that, if you don't mind, as not even Cadance knows I am her many times great-grandmother. Celestia says, her head bowed a little at the thought of her ancient and long-dead husband, as the pair had marred after the birth of their daughter, but he had died a few years before Luna had gone insane, and Nightmare Moon had been born as a result of her not paying attention to her sister, who had made one small request. Something she would have spent more time thinking over before saying yes or no, but she had really only recently watched her husband die in their bed, and her daughter had long since left the castle to live her own life and had even had children of her own by that point. Your secret is safe with me, sister, like the countless others I know. Now, if you don't mind, I have some work to do before I settle down to. Celestia only nodded at Luna's words, watching as her sister left to sort out her own work, turning to deal with a few items of work she had to do before the sunrise, as well as sort out what she was going to do with the 3 crusaders, but that could wait until the morning. Over the next 2 weeks leading up to the gala, Harry and Luna spent a lot of time together within Luna's quarters learning transfiguration magic. Within that time, Harry, being a little surprised at how good a student the princess was, quickly mastering the basics of the magic within that short amount of time. Celestia also took part in some of these lessons after the first week of working with the Crusaders. Most of the first few days just her sitting down with them and just talking about what they were really good at, and not any of the wild adventures they kept on having. Midway through that first week, she managed to get Scootaloo and Apple Bloom to realize what their marks were, but Sweetie Belle was proving to be very stubborn about realizing that her singing voice and her ability to write song with such ease was her true calling. Celestia could only shake her head at how stubborn Sweetie Belle was proving to be. After all she really had to do with the other two was point out what they really enjoyed doing, and what they were really good at. In Apple Bloom's case, it was art, as such her mark, when it come into being, was a paintbrush under a partly wooden painted apple. Scootaloo, however, was very energetic and had a near-perfect sense of balance, after having the young foal perform some stunts and tricks with her scooter. Soon saw a helmet with an image of said scooter appear on her flank, showing that she was something of a stunt pony. Sweetie Belle, however, refused to believe that she had a beautiful singing voice and she could write song as easy as breathing, according to her 2 friends, that is, but she didn't seem to think her voice was that good or her little doodles of songs were any good at all. What the 3 young foals didn't know, though, was that Celestia had arranged for one of Sweetie Belle's more refined songs to be played that night at the gala, as the 3 would be attending as Celestia's special guests for the evening, as Twilight and her friends had all said they couldn't make it. The postscript in the letter stating that they would rather spend that night with each other at home than deal with the nobles again. The day of the gala found the palace in an uproar, as servants and palace staff ran all over the place getting the main hall and gardens ready for the gala. A small group of maids, however, had things even more difficult compared to that, as they had been given the task of getting both princesses and the 3 crusaders ready for the evening. For 2 of these maids it was even worse, as they had an extra body within the chambers they were working on. Princess Luna, in the form of one Harry Night Sky, who only made the odd comment about what they were doing while reading calmly to one side of the room. Luna would keep on shifting to look over at said stallion while having her gown adjusted for the coming ball, the 2 maids helping her, darting back and forth, brushing her mane and tail as best they could given its misty-like thickness. The gown she had on being a simple thing of silk and lace in deep dark colors, mostly blues, to match her coat. Shouldn't you be going to get ready? It is due to start at sundown after all. Luna comments calmly, looking over at Harry, who kept on reading, not seeming to have heard her. She was about to make another comment when her head was pulled to one side again by the maid working on her mane, the maid giving Luna a look for daring to move while she was working on her yet again. Well, at least you appreciate the hard work us Maras put into our appearances and accept that it takes time to look this good for these special functions. Now would you please leave and get ready, as I refuse to have a data who smells or is scruffy. Luna states with a small smile, turning her head just enough to look at Harry out of the corner of her eye, while also looking herself over in one of the full-length mirrors, making sure the groan was settling right over her flanks. All right, I'm going, and yes, I do appreciate the work you put into your looks, my dear princess. Harry says, getting to his feet and moving to leave the room, pausing long enough to give a small mock bow to Luna as he walked backwards out of the door. Cheeky bugger, Luna muttered before turning back to the finishing touches on her gown and mane, the 2 maids helping her only giving a small nod of agreement with her before carrying on their work. Celestia, a ball gown much like Luna's only in soft reds and yellows with many small rubies and ambers sawn into the hemline, was standing at the head of the main staircase within the entry hall of the palace, the three crusaders flanking her in some of Rarity's finest outfits, Scootaloo trying hard not to move around too much as she couldn't stand being dressed up like she was. The silences within the entry hall of the palace lasted only a few moments, but it was long enough for Luna to get to her sister's side and give a small nod of the head as one would to one's equal in rank and power, Celestia returning the nod of the head before turning to greet the next guest to approach her. The first few guests to approach the sisters were nervous at first of Luna, but after she only gave a small nod the head in greeting and a soft welcome, they realized she wasn't going to attack them or suddenly transform into Nightmare Moon, as such a number of them started to pause for a few moments to give soft greetings and welcoming her to her first public and formal appearances within the royal court since her return. A sudden flash of black and purplish light was the only warning for everyone in the entry hall a good half-hour later as Harry appeared at the head of the line. His black vest and white shirt looking simple next to some of the more glittery guests, but he didn't seem to notice as he walks up the final steps to Celestia and giving a deep bow to her, giving her a small mischievous smile to her at his entrances. "Greetings, Princess Celestia, I hope your evening is an enjoyable one, and that nothing happens to spoil this fine night," Harry says, raising from his bow when Celestia gave a small nod of the head to Harry to signal him to raise. "I am sure it will be, my Lord Nightsky, but while I have you here and in front of most of the royal court, I will do this one thing that I am sure you will enjoy," Celestia says with a small smile as she opened her wings fully and stomped a single hoof to get everyone's attention, giving a small nod of the head when the local noble stallions and fillies were watching her with interest. "I, Princess Celestia and co-ruler of Equestria and guardian of the sun, wish to let this court know that we hereby grant you, Harry Nightsky, the title of lord and a seat within this royal court. Once his oath of loyalty to this court is give, he shall also be granted lands and all rights entitled to one of his rank." Celestia finished with a smile at the look Harry was giving her, as it was clear to her, and just about everyone else, he didn't want to be made a lord within the court, nor did he want to be put in charge of any land save that of his shop. Narrowing his eyes for a moment, Harry suddenly gave a large smile as he turned his head ever so slightly to look at Luna, who was looking at her sister with a questioning look, as it was clear to him that the blue-coated Alicorn hadn't been told about Harry's raise in rank and the title he would gain once a section of land was given to him. Taking a half step to his right after Harry gave a small nod to Celestia, the small step putting him before Luna, a small smile on his face being turned to Celestia for a moment before he bowed to Luna, his wings playing out fully like Celestia's were and Luna's ever so slightly raised and expanded. "I, Harry Nightsky, owner of the simple enchantment shop known as Enchantment, swear myself to my Princess Luna of the Night as her lord. Her wishes are my wishes, her orders my commander, as it should be, and so it shall be from this day froth." Harry finished with his head fully bowed, waiting for his girlfriend to say whether or not she accepted his oath. The silences in the room only lasted for a few moments before a number of the nobles, whose families had been loyal to Celestia since the beginning of her rule, and known from their records that Luna had never had a lord under her rule. None back then had wanted to swear loyalty to the Mare of the Night, and had even done everything they could to prevent her from gaining power in the court because of fear that she would try to overthrow her sister and bring darkness to all the lands. Of course, this action on their ancestors' part was one of the reasons Luna snapped and become Nightmare Moon, but of course history is written by the victor, and Celestia, who had been distraught from being forced to banish her own sister, hadn't been able to stop the unicorn who had been keeping the records of history at the time, writing that her sister had always been plotting to overthrow her and was really out to bring total darkness to the world. The copies of this recording going out the very hour it was finished, meaning it become next to impossible to stop everyone from leaning about this version of history. Celestia looked at Harry with a raised eyebrow at his words, but she didn't say anything to object to his oath. In fact, she even gave a small smile before her head snapping around, however, when she heard some of the lords within the room making comments about her sister. Her eyes narrowing at those lords, who quickly went quiet and looked away, not willing to carry on their comments while under the watchful of the princess. Luna gave a slight shake of the head before taking a few steps forward and lowered her head enough to rest the tip of her horn against Harry's neck, trying to remember what Celestia had said in the past to new lords and their oaths as she started to talk. "I, Princess Luna, co-ruler of Equestria and guardian of the moon and night skies, accept Harry Nightsky's oath and welcome him to my court. May he and his decadents live long and serve me well in the coming years." "You may be the mother of those decadents, my dear," Harry whispered so softly that Luna only just heard him, and she was still leaning over him as her horn gave off a glow to indicate that Harry was indeed a noble now under her command within the Canterlot court. Luna knew that her dark blue coat was the only thing that stopped Celestia and the rest of the guests from knowing that she was blushing lightly at Harry's words. A slight shake of the head being all she could manage before raising her head and indicating the spot next to her for Harry to take as was his right as her partner for this evening. I also welcome you to our court, Lord Night Sky, and I hope you can meet with my sister and myself at some point in the morning to decorous what land is going to be placed within your care and the care of your decadence. Celestia says with a slight nod of the head to Harry before turning back to greet her guests that had started to move again. Luna turned her head just enough to look at Harry, a slight angling of her head being enough to signal to him that they should head into the main ballroom and mingle with the guests already there. Harry only nodded back before giving a slight bow to Luna as he stepped back a little and allowed her to move to lead the way to the ballroom, and the royal garden beyond that were open to the public this night. Entering the main ballroom, the couple paused for a few moments. Wings partly played out for all to see as they looked around the room, the music pausing at their entrances but quickly started back up again with its soft and graceful tones flowing throughout the whole room within moments. This helping a number of ponies relax a little at the sudden appearance of one of the royal sisters without her fanfare. I do believe we made an impression, my princess, Harry says, moving at Luna's side as she moved towards a small group of ponies that were standing to one side taking about some mindless topic. Luna only really paying the topic little mind as she gave a nod to Harry's comment but otherwise not commenting herself. The first hour of the ball went by in this manner as Harry and Luna moved from group to talk and hear what the high-ranking ponies of Equestria thought was important at the current time. Most of it being simple gossip, but one thing did stand out for the young couple, and that was that young Princess Cadance had been asked if she would marry the new captain of the Day Guard Shining Armor. Or that was the most popular rumor running the courts at the moment. I know that the young colt has been seeing my niece for some time, but I didn't think he had built up the courage to ask her to marry him yet. Last I heard he was getting ready to ask her only to back out at the last minute or something along those lines. Luna says softly to Harry when they went to take a small walk around the garden just to get away from everyone for a little while. That and Celestia had just joined the main ball and everyone was starting to get a little loud trying to talk to her all at once. Mostly to confirm that it was true that Luna now had a lord within the royal court that was loyal to her over the razor of the sun. He hasn't yet too, but I do know he is building up to it. Came a soft genital voice that seemed to spread calm and love to all who heard it. Both Harry and Luna turned their heads rather quickly at the sudden voice, the sight of the pink-coated tricolored mane and tailed alicorn being what greeted them. The alicorn approaching them in a beautiful soft white ball gown that flowed over her flack much like Luna's night blue gown. Harry bowed his head a little in greeting, Luna doing much the same for her many times great-grandniece. A pleasure to see you could make the gala this evening, my dear niece. I trust your young stallion was able to join you as well? Luna says calmly, moving to seat down on one of the many mates laid it around for ponies who wished to seat and just enjoy the soft silvery glow of the full moon over the royal garden. Harry only taking a moment to move one mate closer to Luna before seating down himself, one wing coming up and over Luna's back, pulling the blue alicorn closer to his side. Nice to see you, soliciting Auntie Luna, and yes, Shining Armor is here, he's just off getting us some drinks. Cadance says with a happy little smile at the pair moving to seat down next to them, giving Harry the once-over look before saying with her smile still in place, and this must be the new noble within the royal court who has already caused quite a stir when he swear himself to you, Auntie, and not Auntie Celestia like all the others have done. I have always enjoyed and found safety in the darkness of the night, and am happy to say I would follow any order my dear fee Luna could or would give without question, as she is the soul of the night that I love so much. Harry comments back with a small smile as he looked down at the slightly smaller alicorn next to him, who was regarding him with a happy little smile and a mischievous glint within her eyes. Oh, that is going to bit you in the flank later, my good Lord Night Sky, as I know Auntie Luna in the time she has been back has been looking for a partner to help pay her sister back a little for making the banishment 1,000 years, and not something a little more reasonable. I believe the comment was a few months back. Cadance says with a laugh as she turned her head enough to look out over the garden. Both Harry and Luna hiding the slight laugh they wanted to give, however, at how the pink-coated alicorn's eyes kept on drafting over to the glass doors leading to the ballroom as they know she was watching hour for her boyfriend Shining Armor. I don't know what you were talking about, my dear niece, now please. Tell me how you have been, as it has been a few weeks since we last spoke. Luna says, turning her head to face Cadance. Harry turning his head enough to look at the stars overhead, just enjoying the night sky while listening to Luna and Cadance catch up. Said catch up, quickly turning into princess gossip. Harry did what any smart young man would do when two women were talking about gossip or fashion. He nodded at all the right points and agreed with Luna more than Cadance, as Luna was the girlfriend, as such she had to be right more than her niece. Luna looked over at Harry out of the corner of her eye and gave a small smile as she agreed with her again on some topic she was debating with her niece. An evil-looking smile started to form on her face as she was able to ask Harry something that if he agreed to could prove fun for her, yet a bit of a pain for him and a really large pain for her sister. However, before she could do this, shining armor arrived finally with 2 glasses of Celestia special sunrise wine, the wine having a slight glow to it like it had somehow trapped the first few rays of sunlight within it, also had a magical taste that seemed to bring warmth and joy to any who drank the rare wine. The wine being made as a result of Celestia being an immortal pony, meaning she had lots of times on their hooves. Because of this, a few hundred years after Luna had been banished, Celestia had decided to take up winemaking, growing her own vines and making the wine herself, only ever making a half dozen or so of the special sunrise wine each season, as it took a lot of magical energy to make, and as such Celestia only ever made so many each season, the winery and vineyards being hidden at last. Rumor and gossip within the mountains near Canterlot, as not even Luna know the location. Ah, Princess Luna, I wasn't aware that you were here this evening, and this must be the newest member of the royal court. I am Captain Armor, only resonantly promoted to that rank because the skill I have shown with shielding spells. Shining says with a bow to Luna and then a nod of the head to Harry, who returned the nod without really looking away from his view of the night sky. I know who you are, young Captain, and please there is no need to be so formal, and don't mind Harry has lost in star-gazing like he normally does when I'm with him after moonrise. Let me give you an example of how much attention he is paying yous all at the moment. Luna says calmly, first moving her head a little as if to wave the young Captain to the mat that Cadance had pulled over to the group before settling down herself. Turning her head a little, Luna gave a smile before saying calmly, just looking at the ebony-coated alicorn next to her. Harry dear, it's alright if I go with you when the portal is finished, isn't it? I would love to see your home and maybe meet some of your old friends. No problem, dear, was all Harry said, not even looking at her as he kept on looking up at the night sky, lost in his own thoughts and not really realizing what Luna had said. Cadance and Shining looking at him with wide eyes at how calmly and easily he said it was okay. Before either of them could comment on this, Harry's head snapped down to look at Luna, his eyes going wide as he says, looking at her in shock. What did you say? You just agreed to letting me come with you when you return to your home, dear, and I am not going to let you back out of that agreement. Now pay attention or I'll have you agree to other things you might not like or agree with. Luna says with a smile, turning back to her niece and her boyfriend. Harry only bowed his head a little and made a few muttered comments about how Celestia was going to kill him for agreeing to Luna going with you when she had only just gotten her sister back, really. The rest of the evening passed quickly, save for Celestia making Harry swear on his magic that he would protect her sister should the younger princess follow through with her statement of following Harry to his home world. Harry not even fighting with her on this one, as he had bowed to the day ruler of Equestria and made his oath to protect her and see to it that Luna would return to Equestria safely. Another thing that happened was that Sweetie Belle nearly passed out from shock at the first note of one of her little songs being played the way the instruments played and gave life to her song, making her eyes go wide. A flash of light appears on her flank. A few moments later, the image of an inkwell and quill with a scroll that had a few musical notes on it appearing on her flank. A few moments later, her friends gathering around her to congratulate her on getting her cutie mark. Harry was escorting Luna to her rooms after seeing off the few ponies who at least were friendly to the Princess of the Night, the pair talking softly and just laughing at some memory of how many of the nobles had reacted to Harry's oath to Luna, and not Celestia, a large number of them having even gone to the length of trying to talk Celestia into make Harry retake his oath, only to have it warded to her and her alone. Celestia had tried to calm down the lords and ladies at first, but in the end resorted to the royal Canterlot voice to get them all to be silent and warn all others within the palace that she wasn't going to make Harry chance his oath, and that she in fact supported the idea that Luna now had the beginnings of her own royal court. I'll bid you a good night now, my dear Fee. I'll see you in the morning, and before I leave again for Ponyville, as the shop has been closed for too long and I have a lot of work still to do with the portal. Harry says with a small bow to Luna, followed soon after by a light pick on the cheek, the princess giving a little shy smile before returning the small kiss. I'll see you with the sunrise, then my dear Harry. We'll sort out what land becomes yours over breakfast before you leave. Luna says softly, turning to enter her room, giving a slight jump when Harry ever so lightly swatted her flank with his tail as he moved past her. Although I'm gonna have to get him back for that little flank swat. Can't have him getting too full of himself and think he can get away with that sort of thing too often. Luna thought to herself as she went to bed within her own quarters, for a change trusting and hoping that his sister wouldn't have a panic attack for not sleeping within the Sun Guardian chambers this night. Chapter 6. Disclaimer. Don't own Harry Potter or MLP. FIM in any way, shape, or form. /N. Hi all, I hope everyone had a good New Year and Christmas. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy this chapter and some of the answers to what Harry has been though in the past before he come to Equestria, as well as what his cutie mark really is, as I will say this much, it isn't the night sky. I hope you all enjoy and leave lots of reviews. Chapter 6, Past. The next month passed quickly within Ponyville, Harry taking up lordship over the Everfree forest being one of the few major things to happen. The only other major thing to happen really was a team of engineers showing up at the edge of the town and started to cut a new road leading from Ponyville to and in to the Everfree forest. A few of the ponies in town took notice of a number of simple round stones being barred within the new road as it was built. Everyone in town being told that these stones had runes of a new branch of magic being learned carved on them. The rune putting up a magical barrier that would stop the wildlife that was within the forest from coming onto the road and attacking any travelers. Similar stones that would only stop the larger predators, as they did need some of the lesser beasts to have free access to the town at night as they helped the farms and such that surrounded Ponyville with the growth of crops. The stones having been put up along the edge of the town facing the forest on the mayor's request. On the morning of fine summer day found Harry walking down the main street of Ponyville, a happy little spring in his step after he had gotten a note from Luna about the pair getting together for a dinner. Data in the next few nights, as the pair hadn't been able to see each other the last week or so thanks to some problems within Canterlot. His train of thought was cut off however when Spike came rushing past a roll of parchment in hand. As he rushed past Harry, turning his head enough to follow the little purple dragon, a slight tilting of the head to one side as if to try and work out what the big rush was that made the little dragon nearly knock him on his flank. Shacking his head after the dragon left his line of sight, Harry turned and started back on the road to his shop, and to write a letter to Luna to let her know that the portal was nearly ready. In fact, if his calculations were right, the portal would be ready within a month's time, or the physical part of it would still need energy to open all the way, but with both Luna and Celestia helping, that wouldn't take long. Arriving at his shop, Harry paused at the sight of Derpy looking over her mailbag ever now and then, tilting her head to one side or the other, trying to get her head at the right angle to account for her lazy eyes. Harry giving a small smile to the gray Pegasus before his horn gave off a brief glow of purplish energy that quickly vanished as Derpy's eyes seemed to straighten a little to face more forward then to the sides like they had been before. Oh thanks Harry, your old spell wore off a few days ago, and I hadn't gotten around to seeing you to get it recast. So I'm glad I caught you this morning. Derpy says in her cheerful tone, dropping what little mail Harry had into his offered hoof, watching with her normal smile as his magic took a hold of the letters and started to look over the mail. Perfectly okay, Derpy. Harry says with a friendly smile, having always liked the slightly accented prone Pegasus, and had spent a few days just sitting back talking with her about her problems. If you can make the time later on today, you should stop by and see me, as I might have something that should help you with your eyes, so that you don't have to track me down every few days to get that charm redone. Derpy just smiled and nodded before flying off for her next drop-off, somehow crashing into a sign hanging over the neighboring store, making Harry wince in sympathy for the mare, but otherwise didn't comment or move to help her, as she kept on flying, shouting out an apology to the store owner, who had pocked their head out to see what had crashed into their sign. Opening up his own store and throwing his mail into two piles, mostly request orders for enchantments or a few inquiries about the notes he had left in the Royal Library on the magic of his home world, Harry making a note to himself to answer those as soon as possible, while also replying to those who had asked for some enchantments and let them know that he wasn't able to fill that request for one reason or another. Luckily, only a few of the letters fell into that category. He did make a note to get a pair of glasses made by the local doctor and sent over to him ASAP, as he did want to keep his promise to Derpy and give her a way to see better without him having to redo his charm every couple of days, and putting the enchantments on a pair of glasses would be the best way in his option. Any further thoughts were brought to a stop when Twilight and her friends came walking down the street out front of his store, all of them talking about what they were going to need to pack for a trip to the Canterlot and the wedding they had been asked to help with. Now why are they planning on a trip to a wedding, as I don't recall anyone they know marrying or planning on marrying that would request all 6 of them the last time I was in Canterlot. Harry thought to himself, only to have a small purple scaled clawed hand wave under his chin, a letter with Luna's royal seal pressed into the wax seal. Sorry I nearly run you down earlier, Harry, but I got so focused on getting the wedding invitation and help requests to Twilight and the others that I forgot to give you this letter from Princess Luna that was included with the others. Spike says with his normal cheerful tone as Harry took the letter from his hand and opened it with a nod to Spike to let him know that he didn't mind the delay in the letter being delivered, and that he hadn't been hurt by the near miss not too long ago. You better get going and help the others pack. Let them know that if they need anything to stop by, and I'll help however I can. Harry says, turning away from Spike. Once the little dragon gave a nod and wave, rushing off to help Twilight pack. Moving to take a seat by the cold fireplace, Harry calmly opened the letter from Luna, giving a nod as a wedding invitation fell out, being caught by his magic before it could hit the ground. The letter stating that Luna wanted Harry to provide extra security for the wedding, as a number of threats had been made against Equestria, and more to the point, Canterlot itself, from an unknown party. I guess I better brush up on some wards to lay around the city to help in protecting it. Might even see if Luna is willing to make me a member of the guard or give me some sort of title other than Noble of the Night Court, so that I can help in defenses of the city should anything happen and not get attacked by other guards or arrested for helping. Harry thought to himself before turning to head into his back room to get ready himself, making a note to sort out Derpy's glasses before he headed to the train the next morning. The rest of the day passed without any troubles for Harry, Rarity showing up long enough to get some of his more exotic material to help her in making the wedding gown for Cadance. Harry being more than happy to give her what she needed before going back to carving runes into the gold frames of the glasses he had rushed over for Derpy. Derpy did show up later that day to pick up her new glasses, thanking Harry with one of her crushing hugs before going off to see what her few Real friends thought of the new eye, where her eyes, for once looking like just about any other pony's eyes, striate and not wondering, Harry watching the gray and blonde Pegasus walk away with a smile as he turned back to work on a few ward stones that he would set up once he got to Canterlot. Harry knew that Derpy was fine with how her eyes were, but he had seen the hurt look in her eyes from time to time when some other pony would point out her problem and pick on her. He had even stood up for her once or twice from the shadows when it got to bad, and that was why he had been doing the spell for her, to show the other ponies that she was as normal as they were, and that it wasn't her fault that she had been born with lazy eyes. The fact that after the first time he had cast the spell and Derpy had been able to really look at her daughter without having to angle her head at some weird angle first, had been all the payment he had needed, but he had accepted the title of honorary uncle for little Dinky Doo as repayment for helping Derpy out. Do I use the identifying ward to show illusions and other shape-charging abilities, or should the simple anti-portkey operating and shielding wards be enough? Harry found himself muttering a little after sundown. The fact that Luna hadn't shown up not long after moonrise showed that something major was still happening back in Canterlot since they had last met up, and she was still unable to get away as a result of this. He was really starting to miss her joining him for their normal dinner and talk. Why not have them on standby or something like that, so that if they are needed you can just activate them? Twilight's voice sounded from the doorway, her eyes briefly looking over the room before resting on Harry, and the number of marble stone sheets resting on his main counter, and along the wall behind him with a wide range of runes carved into all of them. Because I would have them set to active while I was charging and building them up to cover the whole city, and as such that would mean more magical energy I would need to filter through the stones. Although I could get Luna to help me with this, as it would be good practices for her. Harry comment back, bringing one hoof up to tap his chin in thought on having Luna help with the wards. I would be willing to help in that regards then, Harry, but that isn't why I came here, as I find myself in need of a trunk that can hold a lot of books, as I can't take everything I want to take with me, as well as my own research material. There's a couple like you asked for in the back room. Help yourself to any of the trunks that have been painted blue. The red ones well bit if you try to approach them or open them. The purple ones will teleport themselves to the other side of the room if you approach them, just to give you a far warning. Harry says with his friendly smile, turning back to look over the marble slabs he was carving runes into. Twilight could only nod at his words before walking into the storeroom he had pointed out. Her eyes quickly adapting to the darkened room and spotting the blue trunks he had said was safe. Her eyes, however, going to the single yellow-shaded wood trunk that was seating between a red and purple trunk, and seemed to look the less dangerous, as the red one clearly had teeth and fangs along the lead rim, while the purple one had a strange purplish glow about it. Harry, what does this yellow trunk do? Twilight called over her flank, walking carefully around the room to the three blue ones off to one side. Yellow? I haven't made any yellow ones, was the return shout as Harry came trotting into the room, his eyes locking onto the unknown yellow trunk, looking at the two on either side before looking at the middle one again. Great, you lot are breeding, aren't yours? I want have that sort of thing happening here. Reds to the right, purples to the left now. He finished shouting the two named colors, either shuffling along the floor in the red cases to the named wall, while the purple all vanished and the reappeared at their wall, leaving the single yellow one along in the middle of the room. How do objects breed? Twilight asks softly, using her magic to float one of the blue trunks over towards the doorway, moving to stand at Harry's side as he slowly started to walk towards the trunk, his horn glowing with its normal purplish glow while he slowly started to circle it. I don't mean breed as in babies, but breed as in the two magics, or in this case maybe countless others within this room somehow mixed or blinded and slowly started to create this trunk here, which means I am dealing with a totally unknown in what it can do, which shouldn't be possible thanks to the wards I have over this building, which is supposed to bleed off the excess energy, and even destroy items that are, for lacking of a better word, leaking magical energies. Twilight started to have trouble following Harry's words as he started to descend into a totally technical babble on how his wards worked on bleeding off the pools of energy that many of his items put out when in large enough quantity, which his storeroom and the small cottage that had been built in the clearing of the portal. After a few moments of listening to him explain how the new trunk came into being, Twilight asks softly, moving to stand in the doorway now, "So what abilities does this trunk have, Harry?" "Well, I can safely say that it has the standard expansion charms on the inside as well as multi-compartments, but it also seems to have something extra that I just can't seem to place," Harry comments softly, slowly circling the trunk for a few moments only to jump backwards when of all things little feet and legs appeared on the button of the yellow trunk, the whole thing walking to follow him around as he kept on circling, trying to get the trunk to stop. "They are called feet, Twilight, my dear, and no, it isn't supposed to follow me around at all," Harry states, slowly walking towards the— "What do you mean it's just you luck, Harry? Is there something special about this book you're talking about, or is it something else you're complaining about?" Twilight asks quickly, moving to the store entrances, moving the trunk she had come for over with her, the move being made because she wanted to get out of his way before he mowed her down with his pacing. Back on my world, an author by the name of Terry Pratchett writes a series of books called The Discworld. I'll spare you the details and even buy you a few copies once I get back to my world. But anyway, one of the things in his books is a trunk with legs like that. It will follow its owner anywhere, even into Death's realm. It's called luggage. And it's just my luck to create something like that just because a ward isn't working the way it is meant to, or something of that nature, Harry states, stopping in front of the storeroom door, one hoof lashing out and slamming into the door when it rattled from the luggage, trying to force its way through the oak door after having lost sight of what it considered its master now. "Stop trying to break out of there, I'll sort out what to do with you later," he shouted at the door, which gave one more shack from being hit before the sounds of hundreds of little feet came a moment later. Twilight's face seemed to light up a little at the thought of getting so many new books, only to give a small laugh when Harry cursed again and kicked the door again when the trunk or luggage tried to ram its way out of the storeroom workshop. "I'll leave you to it then, Harry, and see you first thing tomorrow at the train station." She didn't stay around to hear Harry's reply, but she did pause at the sound of wood breaking and Harry's cries for the trunk or luggage as he called it to stop and not to eat his floor, stoke shaking her head and forcing herself not to turn around. She quickly left the store, making a mental note to not ask Harry if he had a good night or not in the morning when they meet up for the train ride to Canterlot. The next morning, a good few hours after sunrise and everyone had eaten, found Twilight leading her friends towards the train station, all of them talking about what they had planned for the upcoming wedding. Twilight's primary comments being that she was going to spend the first half of the meeting with her brother shouting at him about seeing someone behind her back without telling her before the wedding invitation. The group fell silent, however, when they got to the train station in time to see Harry walk onto the platform, a yellow trunk following along behind on hundreds of little feet. Coming to stop at the edge of the platform, Harry tapped one of his back hooves once, which caused the trunk to stop dead, and then seat itself down just behind the black olicorn. "Good morning, ladies. I trust you have everything needed for this wedding?" Harry asks without looking at the group, his eyes seeming to be looking down the track that would lead the train to Canterlot, the slight pinkish glow that could only just be seen far off in the direction of the city, only adding to his worry on what could be happening within the city going by Luna's letter. "We should do as most of the items we need would be within the city, so that shouldn't be a problem," Twilight says, her friends all giving a nod of agreement, or in Pinkie Pie's case, jump up and down shouting that she had everything she would need for the wedding party. "That good. I have the new ward stones ready to go and we'll place them once we get to the city. Until then, I say we relax and plan what we are going to do to help out with the wedding," he says calmly, starting towards the train when it pulled up a few moments later, the ponies in charge calling out that its next stop would be Canterlot and that everyone getting there in Ponyville should do so now. The group as one walked on board the train and quickly took up one of the cars with all of their baggage and such, Harry taking a seat across from the girls who took up most of the other seats before him, all of them talking and chatting about what they would need to do and know before they could fully plan for the wedding. The first hour of the train ride to Canterlot passed with the Mare Six and Spike talking and planning whilst Harry spent his time looking over his notes. He was studying mostly a few hoof-made books he had been writing on the magic of Earth. Most of the information came from the large knowledge dump from Voldemort's soul fragment back when he had first been thrown into the void. But some of the contents was from his own findings on magic whilst he had wandered the void. There had been a lot of time and little else to do in that place, but learn how to use magic without his wand. Harry, I've been meaning to ask you something ever since I read your last paper on the magic of your world. I hope you don't think I'm being rude for asking this, but how in the name of Celestia do you know so much about magic? You have stated in the past that you are only about our ages. I mean, I'm one of the best unicorns in the land at spell casting and theory, but your knowledge blows me out of the water. Twilight asked softly, her friends nodding in agreement. All of them at one point or other had read at least one of his works and more than a few of his notes, if only to get to know their new friend that little bit better. Harry looked over the group for a few moments before nodding slightly and putting his book to one side. Calmly folding his front hooves over each other, he considered them. Let me answer that question with a question for you, Twilight. How does one measure and gain skill and knowledge? With time and study of cause, but Twilight answered only to be cut off when Harry raised a hoof with a smile. Correct, Twilight, on both counts. I have had plenty of both, or maybe I have had a little of both. Time is hard to track in a place where it has no real meaning. But how can that happen? I mean, wouldn't you have been able to keep track of time with the sun? And Twilight was cut off, however, when the whole car was plunged into blackness. Not even a light spell from her horn was able to dispel it. Her other senses started to be affected, hearing sharpening. It seemed as though the hairs on her body stood on end, seeking some sort of reassurance she could identify. The only thing she could recognize was the slightly panicked breaths she assumed came from her friends, and a strange blackness shot through with odd flashes. There again and gone, only to return. Stars? Perhaps? And a purplish mist that seemed to fill the darkness in eddies and swirls. Welcome to what was my reality for who knows how long, my dear fillies. This darkness is everything. What is up, what is down? How long has it been since you have seen the light? 1 minute? 1 hour? Is that a breeze? Or is it my mind playing a trick on me? Who knows? I sure as heck didn't. Harry's voice seemed to come from all around them. The 6 Mares and the single dragon could only look about them, seeing no one, but hearing each other, hearing Harry, but seeing only the odd light, the mist and the darkness. Twilight was the first to realize that her hooves were no longer on solid ground, and yet there was no real sense of floating. Applejack and Pinkie Pie seemed to be taking the experience a little more calmly than the others, but it took a lot to rattle the 2 Mares. Applejack felt very unbalanced compared to Pinkie Pie, though she was careful to contain her unease. She much preferred to have all 4 hooves on solid ground, whilst the party pony tended to be on 2 hooves or less more often than the farm mare. Putting up decorations required some inventive stretching, after all. Rarity and Spike had initially screamed, softly, of course, in surprise at the abrupt loss of that reassuring solid feeling beneath their hooves. Spike had reached out for the white unicorn as she had been closest to him when they had been plunged into their darkness. He touched something. At least he thought he did, but he could not actually feel what it might be. The sense of touch was not right. Rarity, like Twilight, had sought to use her magic to get herself back to the ground, only to find she had no idea where the ground actually was, and all she could do was try to shed a little light into the blackness. Reflected that even if his power was not quite in the same league as their princesses, Harry still outclassed any unicorn within the kingdom. How long do you think you could stay within this place and not lose your mind to madness? How long would it be before, in your insanity, you became sane just because it would be a change from being insane? In that moment, when you become totally sane, you start to learn and relearn everything you thought you knew, until you know it inside and out. Do you even realize at first that you can do magic that is thought to be impossible for your kind to know? Answer me these questions, and then, and only then, will you know how old I am, and how much knowledge I have locked within my mind. It would only be a matter of time before you would go insane within this place, and so much longer before finding sanity. Finding sanity, the knowledge and the skills being relearned. It must have taken so many years. I'm sorry you went through this, Harry, but please could you undo this illusion? Twilight was well aware that they had all moved close to each other and were huddling in a tight group in an unconscious bid to comfort each other. Harry tossed his head, walking slowly around the huddled group, pausing when he was side-on to Twilight and in front of the group. Who said this was an illusion? Who said we did, or did not, leave the train, Twilight? After all, in time you have been here, have you never noticed that my tattoo looks a lot like this place? The light brightened sufficiently for the marking on Harry's flank to be visible, and Rarity trembled as the feeling of the floor of the train car firming beneath her hooves. It's not a part of the night sky as we thought. Is it? Very good, Rarity. I can control the void, or what passes for control of something that will always be untamable. I can at least open small portals into it, even if only for a few minutes. I can even build and guide things within it, say like a bridge that would link this world with my former home world. Though to build something that would withstand the energies of the void, I would need a lot of energy. A lot of energy. That is why I need the princess's help, or to slowly build it up over a long period of time. The group looked at each other in surprise at what their friend was capable of doing, as they couldn't imagine anyone, no matter how powerful, being able to control, if only slightly, that space of nothingness. Well, partner, I have to say this much: what you went through has only added to my respect for you and your skills. Applejack says, talking forward enough to place a hoof on Harry's shoulder, giving a nod before moving back to seat down to one side and think on what she had felt while within the void. The others all agreed with Applejack before going about their own thing, once again Harry watching them all for a moment before going back to his work, thinking on what he would need to do once they got to Canterlot to set up the ward. When the train came to a stop a few hours later and just outside of the limits of Canterlot, Harry rose up and put his head outside the window, the sight of the pinkish-red barrier spell covering the whole city being what greeted him, the sight of two-day guards standing just within the barrier on either side of the track, also standing out as one looked over a list of some kind before giving a nod. Some protection when they don't even look on board the train to see if it's got everyone who is meant to be on board, and that they are who they say they are. What is the point of having a shield when you don't do anything to stop ponies from getting in without cheeking them first? Harry thought to himself while moving to the lugged, which had been seating to one side, not moving or even trying to each any of the girls' own bags, thankfully. When the train stop, girls, I'll be going to the city edges and starting to place the ward stones. You lot can do as you wish, but if you should come across Luna while within the palace, please let her know where I am so she doesn't worry about me. Harry says, stepping towards the door off the train, feeling the slow application of the brakes starting to take effect. We can do that for you, partner, so don't you worry about Princess Luna finding you in little to no time. Applejack says with a smile, pulling her Stetson hat down on her head, a little harder, pulling her saddle bags up onto her back and helping the others a few moments later as needed, the train coming to a stop just as the last of her friends finished getting their packs together. I am both looking forward to and dreading that meeting, as we haven't been able to see each other for a few days thanks to whatever is going on here in Canterlot. Harry says, stepping off the train as it came to a complete stop, lugged following along behind him without a problem, a few of the night guard forming up around him as he started down the train tracks towards the edge of the city, not really paying his escort any mind. The Mare 6 looked on for a few moments before starting towards the palace to start helping out, or in Twilight's case, meet this bride for her brother that she hadn't even known was seeing someone, and that they had reached this point. Oh, she was so going to have words with him over that, as well as make sure this mare was worthy of her brother. Chapter 7. Disclaimer. I don't own Harry Potter or My Little Pony in a way, shape, or form. /N. Been a while, people, but I have only my writer's block on all writing to blame that, and I just haven't been feeling up to writing in general for a few years, but the other day I was just sitting in front of the computer thinking on what I could do this day, and what do you know, I wrote out this chapter in only a few days. Not sure if I can keep up that pace and such, but you never know. I will say not to excite me to post quickly or often, but I hope that I'm out of my block mode and really gonna get some work done now. Hopefully some of my main storied and not the side one, but no promises. Cheers and enjoy.
Chapter 7. Wedding Trashing.
His coming back to my side. His coming back this day. We are going to have a grand time. Oh yay, his coming back this day. Was the sound of a rather bad song, but sung with a beautiful and near-perfect pitched voice, was what greeted Twilight after walking away from the others, and Cadence's, her head still a little bowed over how Cadence's had acted, as it wasn't anything like she remembered her old falsetter acting around her, or anyone else for that matter. Looking up to see who was singing, Twilight was greeted by the sight of Luna almost bouncing along the hallway. No, in fact she was bouncing the fact that all 4 hooves left the ground at that moment before she landed smoothly. The smile on her face only growing at the sight of Twilight, as Luna did know that Harry was going to be on the same train as Celestia's current student. "Twilight, is my Harry with you and the others?" Luna asks, moving forward to stand right in front of the lavender unicorn, the smile never leaving her face as she locked eyes with said unicorn, her head seeming to turn from side to side as if looking for the named Alicorn a moment beforehand. Twilight couldn't help but smile as she says in her normal tone of voice, stepping to one side, wanting to keep a clear path between Princess Luna and the archway leading out into the courtyard and the city beyond that. "He did come with us, Princess Luna, but he said he was going to go start placing the wardstones, as he called them, around the edge of the city. He left right after getting off the train with the 2 guards you had waiting down at the station." Luna seemed to give an extra shack of her tail as her smile grew even larger before, as Twilight thought she would, the Night Princess shoot out of the hallway and into the courtyard, vanishing just as quickly when she took off, her voice sounding out again as she sung her made-up song once again. The guards on the wall all looking around wildly for a moment at the bluish blur that was their princess before calming down and returning to their watch. Unknown to the 2 ponies, a pair of greenish eyes had watched the whole meeting from the shadows, the irises shaped like that of a snake or cat. The eyes narrowed a little at the mention of some new defenses that hadn't been a part of the plans, but the owner of the eyes was sure that it wasn't make much of a defiances. Harry looked down at the single night guard pony, who was currently digging a hole for him to place the first ward stone at the edge of the city, the other guard who had been following him since arriving within. Canterlot looking down at her partner and husband with a cheeky smile as he kept on muttering about partner who didn't share in the workload. "Why is it that, out of all the night guard, I get you 2 as my escort?" Harry muttered to himself. More than the 2 Pegasus, who thanks to the enchantments on their armor looked to have bat-like wings at the moment, not to mention that their coats had been changed to have a dusty gray color, while their mane and tails had been changed black, only their eyes remaining unchanged by the enchantments, the stallion having deep blue eyes while his wife had deep blood red. "Because all the others are helping with the protection of the palace, and we offered to help you with these wards. Whatever they are," the stallion states from the hole. He was still digging, going a little past his shoulder height now, but kept on going as Harry hadn't told him to stop yet. "That, and you are on punishment for failing to report in for roll call on time this morning, and I got dragged down with you because I was also late thanks to you and wanting a quickie." The mare, whose name was Red Dawn, states with a smile, kicking another dirt clump back into the hole and onto her husband's head. Looking the other way and trying to look innocent when said husband raises his head to glare at her for doing that. Again. "I can't decide if Equestria would survive you 2 having children or not, going by how much chaos you seem to spread just talking to each other. Stop kicking dirt into that hole, it's nearly deep enough to place the stone," Harry says calmly, at first only to snap off when the Dawn kicks another clump of dirt into the hole when she brought one of her front hooves up to rub the back of her neck at his first comment. Dear, why have you suddenly gone very quiet?" the stallion asks softly, looking up at his wife, who was trying to look at the wildness beyond the hole the small group had been digging, her eyes holding a look that seemed to scream she wasn't being quiet so much as she was just trying not to look at the pair. Harry blinked a few times before he gave a smile and nodded the head, moving up to the hole and using his magic lifted his current digger out, saying as he goes, "You and your wife need to sit down for a few minutes. Don't worry about me, as it's going to take a little while to set this stone, and then I'll go and find the spot for the next one. I do hope you have a large house, as I think you're going to need it." It only took another few moments before the stallion realized what Harry was saying, as he quickly went to his wife, asking in a soft tone if it was true, and that she was pregnant, the slow nod of the head being his only answer as the pair moved a little away from Harry to talk over the new development within their lives. Harry spent the next few moments slowly levitating the large stone over the hole he had spent the past hour or more digging with the help of his 2 guards. Giving a nod when he was happy with the angle, he slowly started to lower the stone into the hole, a nod of the head when the top of the stone came level with the ground, the piled earth to one side being pushed in with a small wave of his magic. New grass growing up to hide the stone's location within moments. Giving a final nod to the stone's location, Harry turned to face his 2 guards, remembering that the stallion was called Storm Lantern just then, as he asked, moving over to the pair, "You 2 ready to move on to the next site, or do you need more time to talk about your upcoming parenthood, Storm?" "We are good, sir. Still a little surprised, but we couldn't be happier, sir," Storm says after giving his wife a hug and happy smile, the pair falling into step behind Harry as he started to move along the edge of the city wall that covered the overland path to Canterlot, the pair having gotten used to the luggage that followed along behind the group by now. It didn't take them long to find a good location for the next stone, Harry helping this time a little with the digging of the hole, Dawn laying down to one side beside luggage, her head moving from side to side as she kept watch for any possible trouble. Even though she was keeping a good lookout, Dawn wasn't able to get more than a word out before a dark blue blur slammed into Harry's side, knowing both it and him to the ground and kicking up a small dust cloud which blocked the pair of guard ponies' sight for a few moments. Harry gave a cry of surprise at the sudden attack, and with only a thought to using his power over the void to transport himself out of the bear hug that his attacker was using on to break some of his ribs. A sudden flash of purplish light and a fine haze of mist that he knew of marked the void, and he was gone from his attacker's hold. After a moment, Harry was no longer being hugged to death. He looked at his attack only to be greeted by the sight of his mare friend, and the pouting look on her face at him escaping her hold being what greeted him. A smile coming over his face as he moved to step closer to her, having only then realizing how much he missed having Luna close. Luna looked up at Harry for a moment before giving a smile and quickly shoot back to her hooves, moving to stand in front of him and leaning forwards, the smile still in place on her face as she allowed their horns to come close to touching. This also seemed to signal to the pair of Pegasus to turn away from the couple, finding a nearby tree very interesting to study that and talk full names for their coming family. Harry moved his eyes enough to look at their nearly touching horns, knowing that within the Unicorn Society that horns touching or nearly touching was considered a sign of deep love and trust between the couple. Considering that Luna had never done anything like this before, it was clear to him that she had greatly missed him and wished to bring their relationship closer than it was before this reunion. "I missed you, my Harry," Luna whispered ever so softly after she pulled back a little, only the tips of their horns touching now. "And I you, Luna," Harry says softly before pulling his head back enough to look around, a small cough being all that was needed to let his escort know that it was safe to look their way now. Both Storm and Dawn bowed to their princess before turning back to the jobs they had been doing before Luna's tackle attack on Harry. "I trust you two have been of help to Lord Nightsky here?" Luna asks calmly, moving to lay down not too far away from where Dawn had taken up her post again. Harry meanwhile had moved to the hole being dug and started to help a little with the digging. "We have, Princess, although I have been taking it a little easier than my husband, as he seems to think that because I am with Foal I am made out of glass now," Dawn states, looking over at Storm, who just gave a smile at his wife before going back to digging, Harry commenting that the hole would be deep enough in a few more minutes. "Ah, but to have your first foal you should be very careful, as many things can happen to Miss Scary. So enjoy the attention I suggest, as I know for a fact Celestia did while hiding her pregnancy from me long ago. Now that I think on it, I do remember her having some very odd cravings at that time," Luna states with a small smile, looking over at the two stallions, tilting her head to one side when Harry started to lower the marble stone into the hole. "Thank you, Princess, for that tip and advice. I guess I should also let you know now then that I'll be handing in my leave papers after the royal wedding as Storm, and I have to look into getting a house or talk with our parents to see if we stay with them when the foal is born, as the regulations state that no foals can be within the barracks and we only have the married couple quarters." Luna gave a small nod but also smiled at Dawn, saying as she turns to face the mare, "I'm going to be sad to see you go, Dawn, but I can respite what you have to do. I will however be watching my desk in a few years' time to see your reinstatement back into the Night Guard." Dawn only had a moment to nod her head at her princess comment before a feeling of powerful magic seemed to lance towards the group from the direction of the first ward stone that Harry had put down before, said Alicorn, rearing back in surprise as he threw his magic outwards, throwing Storm back and away from the ward stone he had been standing right next to. However, before he could do anything else, the energy hit the stone with a last of blinding light and force, throwing Harry backwards and into a nearby tree with a loud crunch. Luna had thrown up a shield around herself and Dawn at the energy surge, her eyes however going wide at the crunch and creaking sound of bones breaking coming from Harry's impact with the tree. Dropping the shield once the extra energy had bleed off a little by her own senses, Luna ran to Harry's side, the side of his left wing broken in at least 2 places being what greeted her on getting to side. Harry gave a slight groan and winced in pain as he opened his eyes just enough to look up at Luna, who was already using the field dressing bandages that Storm and Dawn had pulled from their belts along with some strong but light branches to splint his wing at the 2 broken points, her own magic washing over his body as she scanned him for any other injuries. "That was my fault. Forgot to scan for ley lines that might be nearby, and of course accidental tapped it with the first stone, is just my luck," he says softly, slowly getting to his hooves once Luna finished splinting his wing and given him permission to get to his hooves after finishing her scan. "Ley lines?" Dawn asks after looking around and eyeing off the wardstone, as if to make sure it wouldn't explode with energy again while their backs had been turned. Ley lines, or as some called them in the old days, the dragon's paths, as dragons would often nest near them back then. Anyway, the best way to describe them would be that they are rivers of energy that run all around the world below the surface of this planet's crust. Back in the old days, the unicorns of old would tap them for the energy needed to move the sun and moon before my sister and I took over that task, and after our mother left us both for the void. They are very powerful but also very wild, as such very few if any ponies know of them or how to tap them, which after that blast I can see is for good reason. Harry finishes Luna's speech as the alicorn pair slowly walked towards the glowing wardstone, Luna keeping closer to Harry than normal, as he would stumble ever few steps from his little flight into the tree. Be that as it may, my Harry, I think we should hold off on putting. What was about to say by Luna was cut off by a bright flash of light, as no less than a half-dozen crossbows being held in a wide range of lights from magical grips by the golden-clad guards' ponies pointed outwards around the battle, ready going by the armor formed of Celestia. Luna paused at the sight of her sister in full golden armor that hugged her shoulders and flank. The armor rising up her neck, not as tightly as that of the main body, but still enough to make sure nothing could cut into Celestia's neck. The helmet that would normally go with the armor was missing, but her mane was tied up in a high tail so that none of the magical locks couldn't get caught in the metal plating. The armored Celestias were looked to have been put on in a hurry, given that one of the hid leg guards was hanging loosely, the leather ties on the back having come undone from the teleport that she had cast. None of the other unicorns around her looked to be out of order, which to Luna just meant that they had already been ready for combat, and as such only gathered around their princess to arrive at the possible battle site. Spread out and make sure there is no threat here. Caption. I want to know what caused that surge of magic and my sister location. Celestia orders brought Luna out of her observation of her sister's battle-ready form. I'm all right, sister, a minor problem with the wards we asked our Lord Night Sky to raise around the city. Luna called out, moving from Harry's side once Storm and Dawn had moved to take his weight, as he stumbled another few steps towards the still glowing marble stone to one side. A minor problem, you say, when I felt that magical surge as if I was standing right next to it from the palace, and going by the reports just about every single unicorn and a few of the magical sensitive Pegasus and Earth ponies within the city felt that. I wouldn't be surprised if we get reports from Ponyville asking what the magical surge was. Celestia states back, marching up to her sister, who just smiled up at her with an innocent look. A minor one in the fact I forgot to scan for any ley lines in the area or near the area. The new wards tapped them when they sensed the energy needed to power them for as long as the stones themselves stood. Harry says with a hiss as the team's healer, a Pegasus pony from the group that had teleported in with Celestia, moved up and started to poke and scan his broken wing with her trained eyes. Not something one normally looks for at any given time in this day and age, Lord Night Sky, so we'll forgive you this one time for setting off every alarm within the palace and starting all the guards into thinking the attack we have been threatened with had started. Celestia says, looking at Harry after fixing up her armor a little after the rear leg guard had slapped into her hoof one too many times. Princess, you are going to have to wait till later to finish telling Lord Night Sky off, as we need to get him to the royal healer, as although your sister has dressed and splinted the wound properly, it needs to be set and healing magic applied before anything could go wrong. The medic says after looking over Harry's wing with a magical looking glass, making a note on some parchment on where the breaks were. I can't stop yet. Not if you want these wards up before the wedding. Harry states back, looking over the wardstone again, waving off the healer as she tries to get him to lay down and stop using his magic as he scanned the stone to make sure nothing had been damaged by the surge. They can wait until your wing is seen. To Harry, a few hours delay isn't going to matter much. Luna states, moving to Harry's side when he waved his head, a little pushing the pile of earth to one side into the hole covering the wardstone after he gave a small grunt and nod of the head. You're right, but I would feel better getting the northmost stone in place before sunset. Harry states, letting Luna and the unknown Pegasus start to gild him towards the city, be it very reluctantly. I'll lead your escort and half of the guard to come with me to the northern side of the city, Lord Night Sky, and start to dig the hole needed for the next stone. That way all you have to do is come and make sure everything is okay and lower the stone into the ground. Until then, go and get fixed up and rest a little. Celestia says with a soft smile at the stubborn stallion that was Harry Night Sky when he wanted to do something that he really shouldn't be doing but would do it anyway because to him it was too important to leave to anyone else. Harry opened his mouth to protest only to close it when Luna gave him a look that promised more pain if he didn't do as he was told. Nodding his head after a moment, Harry let himself be led away, but not before giving out instructions on how deep and where the hole should be dug. Celestia watched as Harry was led away with half of her personal guard around him, and her sister a small smile forming at how Luna was fussing over him now, saying that he should learn to listen to others, being the last thing she heard before the group out of her sight. Time to move out caption. Was all Celestia says, turning to follow the group of guards, not paying the trunk with many little feet and legs along its underside move to follow her. The guards falling into step around their princess, however, seemed to be eyeing the trunk of carefully, but other didn't comment. The next few days passed without any further problems other than Harry being grounded because of his wing, as even with a little magic to help speed the healing up, it would still take a week or more to fully heal. At this information, Harry left the medical wing with a few comments on actually missing skill grow potion from his home world, as it would have had his wing fully healed within the hour. To help take his mind off his injured wing, Harry spent most of the next few days either making relay ward stones to help bleed off some of the extra energy the ley line was putting into the ward that was going up around the city. These stones would be placed between each of the 8 major stones around the city and led towards the Master Control Stone. This large 2-meter-tall block of marble being placed within the royal garden so that Celestia and Luna could control how and when to lower some of the more dangerous wards Harry was putting up. It was while Harry standing off to one side watching over the wedding rehearsal that something interesting happened a few days after the group had arrived in Canterlot. He watched calmly as Twilight accused Cadance of bewitching her brother and controlling his mind with some unknown spell. Deciding to step in before anyone could do anything, Harry spoke up, walking forward, slowly locking eyes with Twilight as he goes. "I would like to believe you, Miss Twilight, I really would. But you have come in here and shouted out your clams and then present nothing as evidence on what you have clammed. As such, no one, not even I, will believe you, and I am pretty open-minded about this sort of thing." Everyone else gave a nod to Harry at his words, although Cadance looked to be a little upset at what he had said, but quickly looked like the upset bride-to-be that she had been after Twilight's comments and actuations to what had been happening to Shining Armor. Giving a final nod to Twilight, Harry started to walk from the room, saying over his shoulder as he goes, "I'll be in Luna's tower doing the last of the relay wardstones. The whole system should be up the day of the wedding, Celestia, just so you're aware." The rest of the group slowly left the room as well, leaving Twilight along with her thoughts, Celestia only taking a moment to thank Harry for his work, and that she hoped nothing would happen before the wards could be activated, as they would be a huge help in protecting the city. Chrysalis hanged back from the rest of the group, watching them leave. Once the main doors had swung close, she stepped forward, a evil-looking smile forming on her face as she started the spell to teleport Twilight to join her old foal-setter in the old crystal mines under the city. None would hear Twilight's calls for help, but one would feel the magic being used, and as a result of the odd energy, speed up his work to help protect the city. Early the next morning, a good few hours before the wedding, Harry was seen leaving the palace with an escort of a dozen guard ponies, only Dawn and Storm being from the night guard. Following along behind Harry, and between the guards was his luggage, the little legs keeping pace with Harry and his escort without a problem. Resting on top of it was a number of marble sheets the size of an average pony's hoof print with a number of runes carved into them. Watching the group leave, Chrysalis gave another smile as she walked around her chambers. The 3 changeling that were to be her bridesmaids stood to one side helping her get ready. The changeling queen's thoughts being on the 4 agents who would ambush that powerful Alicorn and his unknown wards once she had her dear husband drop the shield moments before they said their final vows. Harry looked up from the small work crew that had been put to the job of lifting the cobblestones that were used in the main street leading to the palace, the wardstone being in place, and now they were filling the hole back in and replacing the stones back into the street. The sound of the bells signaling the start of the wedding within the palace being the reason for him to look away from the current work. "So they have started, have they? Better get a move on, as Luna wants a few dances tonight." Harry comments, nodding to Storm, who gave the order for them to move out. Even if the stallion wasn't the ranking officer, he was the one placed in charge by Luna and Harry when he had left the palace that morning. The group had only just come into sight of the gates leading into the palace's main courtyard when the shield around the city dropped and hundreds of insect-like ponies came charging into the city from all sides. Some of the ponies in the street seemed to be bathed in an emerald-looking flame that didn't burn, as a moment later it washed over their body and vanished, showing that whatever was attacking the city was some kind of shape charger, as more of the invaders started appearing around the palace. 4 of the dozen-day guard ponies who were around Harry when the shield went down quickly turned, and as one went to run him through with their lances, only to stop dead when the tip of their weapons hit some kind of purplish mist. Their forms returned to their normal bug-like appearances as their hiss in surprise and anger at the mist. They didn't get to do anything else as lances of purple mist, the tips of which looked to be very solid. Each of the lances hit the changeling in the side or multiple legs, nothing major in terms of injury, but enough to put them out of the fight. Harry, who had always been on guard outside since his little flight at the energy of the ley lines, didn't even look at the 4 downed enemies from his void shield, which was now visible to the 6 remaining guards around his person. Storm and Dawn both moving closer to his side, their weapons now held in their mouths as they looked on at the invasion that had already conquered the city, giving the shouts and cries of pain coming from all around the group. This isn't an invasion, it's a victory. Form up, ponies, we are heading for the main stone within the palace gardens. Do not trust anyone who approach us from now on, not even the princesses, as we have no idea on what these things need to take on a pony's form. Harry states, a crack of a whip being all that followed his orders as he brought up his flame whip that he favored over most other conjured weapons. The group had only taken a few steps when they found themselves surrounded by more than a dozen of the changelings, all of them hissing as a greenish goo could be seen dripping from their mouths. Harry making a note that some of the terrified ponies that had been caught in the first few moments of the attack being cocooned that looked to be made from the same goo. Harry looked at the group in front of him with a smile as he brought his whip up and cracked it down once, saying as his unstrapped wing flared up the void shield around him, becoming more solid, if this is a raid, then you better bring everything you have for me, little bugs, because I don't play fair. He finished this with a flash of purplish light as he vanished and appeared between 2 of the changelings, his whip lashing around one's middle while his left rear hoof slammed into the other one. The guard weren't doing as well as Harry, although Storm and Dawn proved that they weren't going to fall for any of the changelings taking on their own forms to try and confuse them, as they had trained together long before they had joined the night guard. The day guard, however, had taken out a few of their own after only a few minutes of combat. Harry had just jumped up and over a few of the changelings, his whip coming around to burn the rear of all of them, but before he could do anything else with the whip, it was ripped from his magical grasp. The dark blue glow over the handle, however, was all he needed to see to know who had taken it over, as the whip lashed out, wrapping around the middle of another enemy before pulling them into another group that had been gathering around Harry and his dwindling guards. Not even pausing really at the loss of his weapon, Harry conjured up another one, this time a set of twin knives that he brought around, slicing into the flanks of 2 of the changelings that had been coming at him from either side. Both Dawn and Storm came rushing to his right-hand side, deflecting a few attacks with their swords, but losing the blade in the process when the sticky goo overweighted the blades too much for their mouths to grip them anymore. Catch! Was Harry's only warning before the 2 long knives he had conjured went flying, cutting into the back legs of one changeling and clipping the wings of another as he throws them both over to the pair, who caught the blades in their mouth no problem and in time to double-team a larger than the average attacker. I see you have found some new playmates, my dear Lord Knight, Skies. Luna's voice comments as she rose up from the star-like mist that came sweeping in between a couple of the changelings, the whip she had taken control of coming around and cracking loudly on the ground in front of the next line of attacks, this causing the front. Luna only gave a laugh as he brought the whip around for another crack to see if she could get another pile up. Harry meanwhile conjured up 2 crossbows that fired their single bolts into 2 oncoming enemies before throwing them into Anther, one a staff appearing a moment later and in time for him to duck his head and swing it around to knock out of the air that had tried to attack him from above, the changeling crashing into the wall of a nearby building at the force of the hit. Both Storm and Dawn were starting to wear down by this point, loosing the weapons Harry had thrown to them when they got stuck in more of the goo that the changelings were spitting at them now. Dawn had just kicked another changeling into a few of its friends when 2 of them managed to hit her rear legs with some of the goo, which quickly hardened, trapping her in place. Storm, seeing his wife being pined down, quickly moved to her side, taking up a length of wood from a broken-up cart in his mouth, not paying the splinters he got any mind as he beat down and off 2 more of the enemy, who had pounced on Dawn to finish cocooning her now that they had her pinned. Get out of here and help our princess, I'll be fine. Dawn snapped off, rearing up enough to knock a charging changeling back, only to have to duck down fast when Storm swung his weapon around to knock another enemy back from pouncing on her back. Not going to happen, dear. Now watch my back and pray that something breaks this siege before we both get overpowered. Storm says with a smile, spitting his makeshift weapon out of his mouth and taking up a sword that had been dropped by another guard who was now cocooned not too far away from the pair. You're a fool, but this is why I love you, honey. To your left. Dawn says, shouting he warning at the end with a smile as she crouched down as best she could, calling out incoming attacks while watching her husband fight with the speed and strength of a alicorn, his whole stance is screaming he would protect her no matter what. Harry and Luna both only paid a moment's notice to the pair of guards before carrying on to the garden, both of them knowing that they couldn't afford to go back for the 2 ponies as the enemy forces were just too many and kept on pouring into the city fast, then they could knock them down. The pair had just gotten to the end of the block when Harry gave a grunt of pain as two of the changelings managed to get in under a swing of his staff and slam into his injured wing. This, however, didn't slow the alicorn stallion down much as he managed to kick one away, and the other found itself catapulted by Luna's magical grip just as quickly. Harry leaned against the nearby wall for a moment as he smashed another changeling into the ground with an overhead swing of his staff, the pain flare in his wing from the tackle causing him a pause. Now that the two attackers were gone, Luna moved in such a way to cover their flanks, stopping another couple of attackers. Both paused, however, as all of the changelings around them seemed to be covered in a green flame that changed all of them to now look like each other. "Dibs on the one who tried to look like a mare version of me," Harry says as both he and Luna lashed out with both weapons and magic, the dozen changelings around the pair being blown backwards with broken limbs and are knocked out cold from strikes from the two alicorns' weapons. This was soon followed by an almost deafening war cry from the changelings as they all charged as one. The pair soon found themselves on the defensive and only just been able to hold their own for a few moments when a wave of magical energy washed over them, throwing all of the changelings away from them and out of the city, going by some of the flight paths they were taking. Both alicorns just watching as the city's shield come back up with a small smile at each other. "Good distance," Harry comments, bringing his unbound wing up to shield his eyes against the sun glare to see how far some of the changelings had been thrown. "Looks like whatever caused Shining to drop the shield has been taken care of and we are safe for a little breather. Let's get those wards up fully before the shield drops again and we get another wave come in." "Agreed," Luna says as the pair turned as one and ran as fast as they could towards the palace and the waiting wardstone, Luna sending off a message spell to Celestia to let her know that they pair were okay, and that they needed to send teams out to free any of the trapped ponies around the city as quickly as possible. The pair had just ran into the garden where the wardstone was waiting just in time to see Celestia come flying down from the main building, her horn still slightly blackened at the end from her own battle with Chrysalis, but otherwise she wasn't overly hurt and the blackness was slowly falling away like ash. In fact, her landing before the stone was enough to shake off a lot of the blackness. "We need to work fast. Both Shining and Cadance are on their last legs and using all of their remaining magical energy just to keep this shield up. I just hope these wards well hold them out so we can repair and help any injured ponies," Celestia says as she moved to stand on one side of the wardstone, giving a nod to Luna as she came to a stop on the other side. "Just let a little of your blood fall on the stone and I'll active the wards on a wartime footing. That should keep them out until we get everything sorted. Not that I think we need to worry about it as that shield throw them pretty far," Harry says, using his magic to create a dagger which he floated over to Luna. Luna just nodded as she brought a hoof up to let the knife piece the bottom of it before pressing it into the marble column. Celestia only holding for a moment when the knife came around to her side before taking a breath and doing the same. Harry gave a nod before bowing his head, his horn starting to glow with energy, as he started to chant a moment after the runes carved into the marble begun to glow with a mix of all three alicorns' magical energy. The golden yellow for Celestia covering most of the runes on her side, while Luna's dark night blue covering much of hers, and Harry's purplish magic creeping all over the place, filling in runes that Nether Sister's magic was filling and such. At his signal, both mares lowered their hoof that was on the stone and took a step back while still channeling energy into the stone. The energy seemed to mix at the top of the marble. The pyramid-like top seemed to spark for a moment before a blast of energy that was a mix of all three colors of magic. A whitish, almost blinding energy curling like that of a double helix wrapping around the energy from the three alicorns following up the energy trail. Reaching the top, this energy seemed to explode out into 8 points, all of which came down along the intersurface of the umbrella of energy to came slamming down and along the edge of the wardstones just outside of the city walls. The energy remained viable for a few minutes as all three alicorns pushed more energy into the stone, not noticing as the Mare 6 and a tried-looking Shining armor and Cadance came out of the main hall, the sight of the new barrier and magical energy being viable all around the city, causing them to come out and see the display of power. The wards soon started to vanish from sight as the magical energy started to settle down from the activation phase. But every pony could feel the energies from the wards still hanging in the air, but none paid this any mind a moment later when Harry and the princess all fell to their knees, taking in a deep lung full of air as they weakly raised their heads to look at the glowing pyramid that now rested on top of the main wardstone. "We'll need to take them down from wartime footing later on, but for now the city is as safe as it can be. No teleporting in or out, but within the walls are fine, should be the only warning for the general public," Harry managed to say softly before lowering his head to the ground, giving a deep sigh before deciding that a nap was good right about now. Luna gave a nod, as did Celestia, before the pair slowly got to their feet and moved to stand besides the downed alicorn, calling out for everyone to go help in the cleanup and to also look for a doctor for Harry. At least the city is safe now and we know who the enemy is, so we can try to plan ways of countering their shape-charging abilities so that the rest of the kingdom will be safe. But for now we have a clean-up waiting and a wedding to hold. Luna thought to herself while watching teams head out into the city to help with rescue. Until then though, we'll just have to wait and see what happens next.